Anyone still wants to submit their bingo cards, there's still a few outstanding, so the chances of winning something is really good. So please do consider putting it in the yellow box in the foyer. Thank you.
Obiero ayuaguita la wai bye. Obiero anto wane ayuaguita la wai bye. Yetheno negni gwen yaerem gito chwe. Yetheno negni gwen babairo rem gito chwe. Below lui I give on that talk it out. Oh below lui give on that talk it out bye. On diega boro erolo on indara neneravet. On diega boro erolo on indara neneravet. No way. Baba boy. Away baba boy. Away baba boy. Away. Obiero ayuaguita la wai. Obiero anto wane ayuaguita la wai. Yetheno negni gwen yaerem gito chwe. Yetheno negni gwen babairo rem gito chwe. Obiloto lui gagibunde toke down. Below lui give on that talk it out bye. On diega boro erolo on indara nenera bet mama we. On diega boro erolo on indara baba nenera. On diega boro hawe baba we. Hawe mama we. Hawe baba we. Hawe mama we. Hayo ya mundo moyo. Baba siko bebendero mundo moyo. Wala dunyingiri huru mundo moyo. Baba mundo moyo sema kono. Watoto ya mundo moyo. Baba dunia ero mundo moyo. Binadamu mundo moyo. Baba mundo
ትናንት ሶ ዛሬን ተንተርሶ ነገን የምተውሶ ናምናን ማድሶ ይመጣል ትዝታሽ ጓዞን አግበስብሶ ይመጣል ትዝታሽ ጓዞን አግበስብሶ ፍቅሬንስ ሸኘሁት ወጥቼ እስከ ደጅ መውደድን ሸኘሁት ወጥቼ እስከ ደጅ ማባረሪያ ካተኝ ትዝታ ነው እንጂ ማባረሪያ ካተኝ ትዝታ ነው እንጂ ጎን ለጎን ሲሆን ፍቅር ነው ደስታ አበሳ አስቆጣሪው የተለዩ ለታ አልገባኝም እኔ ምንድነው ትዝታ አልገባኝም እኔ ምንድነው ትዝታ ትዝታ ነው አሎን የሐሳብ መርከቡ ትዝታ ነው አሎን የጭንቀት መርከቡ ማራገፊያውማ እኔ ነኝ ወደቡ ማራገፊያውማ እኔ ነኝ ወደቡ ባጠረን ዕድሜ ፍቅር መዝገበ ቃላቱ ትዝታ ባይኖር የትዝታ እንዳገት ወጣሁት ተክዤ
ቆንቆንቆ ሞልዌን ጉንጃንዮ ማጋትንና. Okay, guys, I'm not Ringo, but I'd love for us to all ululate to coming back from a really, really filling lunch. So delicious. That was very nice. I had one cook sisters too many. But on the sound of 3, could we all ululate together? Coming back from lunch, please join me on the count of 1, 2, 3. Thank you guys all here for being here today. It's so exciting for the next sessions. I would love for you guys to do something just for us to practice presence, like the Tutu Legacy Foundation said. So on the count of 3, I'm just going to ask everyone to say shine, and then you guys are going to say shine. Are you guys cool to do it with me? Okay, 3, 2, 1, shine. Shine. I know that's right. Rion, over to you.
All right, welcome back from lunch, colleagues. I just have a few housekeeping issues, and then I'll hand back to Babawa. So first off, we've all really enjoyed the lunch. We know that the lunch was a vegan lunch today and yesterday. And as we know with vegan food, there's often a lot of planning and strategy and design because our food systems just aren't designed necessarily to accommodate that. So there's a lot of intentionality that went into that. So we really wanted to express gratitude to our chef who prepared the food for us, Rufus Baloi. and I'll invite him on the stage now to come and stand next to me. We can also just give him a round of applause. So, Rufus, thank you very much for the effort that you put into the food. We know that you obviously put a lot of thought into it, and we really enjoyed it. So thank you for making this conference experience even better with that. And then I'd also like to express our appreciation to the head of Moyo, the restaurant that hosted us. We know that they went to a lot of effort to create a vibe yesterday with the reception and also just their general hospitality and courtesy. So Pearson Kane, I'd also just like to invite him on stage if we can give him a round of applause. Thank you. So yeah, thank you, Mr. Kane, for also, the food. People say people come to conferences for the food. If you don't have good food, you're not going to get people. And so you two have played a big role in making this engaging experience and also keeping everyone fed and nourished as they engage in the work that they're busy with. So if we can just give them one more round of applause.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Ala, oh, you'd like a picture?
Thank you so much.
Chef, sicela ufoto nawe, chef. Mnandi ukutya kwakho. Okay, wait, can I involve the audience in it? So on the count of 1, 2, 3, when we get in the picture, you guys are going to say shine. Cool? 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much, Sir Sebulele. And I know, guys, that being a vegan is no easy feat, but before I jump into that funny story, Rian, over to you.
Just one more. As you can see, I do the housekeeping and she does the fun stuff. The other thing is we just want someone to please come to reception for us. We can call to the principal's office. So if Tembekile Mzansi, which is the head of institutional relations at State Protocol and Ceremonial Services for the Eastern Cape. If you are here, can you please just make your way to reception in front where we registered. Thank you. Back to you, Babalwa.
Thank you so much. So, guys, I have to share a funny story, right? Because what the chefs and the guys at Moyo just did is exceptional. So, funny story. I was a vegan for 1 year. So I just woke up one day and, I was a vegan, long story short. And when I was a vegan, I was living with my roommate at the time. And I kid you not, I was also kind of lazy. Like umakhulu would say uqhoqhwesa endleni, and I was lazy and I literally used to eat lentils with fried chips. Shout out to my friend Lisa. That was my staple food. That was me saying I'm cooking tonight. I've cooked. And shame, my roommate went through the most. But so I respect. That was very tasty and definitely very, 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 very mouth-watering. So thank you so much to the guys at Moyo. So we're going to move into some, very serious stuff and practical stuff, if I must say. So the next session is talking about practical applications that's incorrect. So the next session that we're moving into is practical applications of country platform ideas for impact. And the gentleman that's going to be walking us through that is Rudy Rix. Rudy Rix, welcome to the floor. Can you please give Rix a warm round of applause, please?
You all know it's not Rix, right? So I won't collect Bobawa, right? We'll keep it at Rix. That's fine. The worst thing to ask me in the Greyville session to chair a conversations with many different people, and then a panel. Many of you know me. Know that I can babble on about some of these things, but on a serious note, this is quite an important part of the conversations that we are having, given the sort of historical perspective and where we come from, and the fact that climate finance has always been the nexus of the conversations within the UNFCCC, and how we move that along. And in South Africa's case, of course, we decided to explore various different ways of accessing finance and capital for just energy transition. I'll speak to you a little bit more about that in setting the scene. And it's not been an easy road, as many of you know. These are sometimes vexed challenges. They come with a series of complexities, various international groups, countries who have different objectives and may not always align with a developing country objective like ourselves. Then, of course, there are significant internal challenges, specifically for South Africa. A relatively flat growth rate for the last 10 years, a significantly high unemployment rate, and our fixed capital investment has literally almost grounded to a halt, although in the last 2 years has picked up a little bit of some of the work that we've been doing. And so, of course, the challenge for us is an important part as climate and climate resilience and the transition is central to our ability to grow the economy. And that's what we've been doing for the last few years, of putting that central, not as an add-on. We're not doing growth and then talk about climate and transition. We're talking about growth, and the paradigm shift is about a transition that shifts us from a carbon-intensive economy to a relatively low carbon-intensive economy where green and climate finance is at the center of this. So this is an interesting conversation that one had embarked on, and something that I'm not an expert in any way, but landed on the desk of my office, and in coordinating it. And I think the team that we put together has been exceptional in driving this, including the partners that are all sitting. You're all sitting so good here, like school kids, right? Waiting to be called to the principal's office. I like that, And there are a number of partners that are here for us to be able to engage in. The way we'll run the session is that I'll do a bit more framing and a bit of historical context to understand how we've gone on. And I warned you, right? They shouldn't have let me chair because I can go on, right? We'll ask Zama to then come up and just speak a little bit from the Presidential Climate Commission. Zama's, of course, one of the commissioners, and works with the PIC, the Public Investment Corporation, as a fund principal, and share her experience from the work that the PCC has been doing. I'll ask my colleague, Gerard Moodley, who is a portfolio lead that works on one of the more interesting and extremely exciting stuff that we're doing around the jet funding platform, and how we utilize funding and grant funding and leverage that to be able to achieve significant amount of objectives. The next session is that we'll move then into a panel conversation, and we'll have 4 panelists that will be here. Salim Fakir from the Climate Foundation, African Climate Foundation, as the Executive Director. Dora Modise, which is the Executive Director for the Presidential Climate Commission. Slim Dali from the AFD, the Regional Economist for the AFD. And back there, Dr. Muhammad Saeed from the DBSA, specialist that works around this areas going forward. So we'll run the session like that. Are you happy with that? Is that fine? Does it sound good? Okay, good. So maybe what I'll do, I'll invite Gerard and Zama. You want to come up here a little bit? Is it fine? Gerard, you too? Hey? No, sit down here. Please sit down. Come, guys. You're not panelists. You're making keynote speaking notes, right? Yeah, please have a seat there, right? So the 3 of us will provide a little bit of context, and I think that's important, and I want them to see that, these are the key people that have been driving this from PCC and from the jet funding. But let me spend a bit more time around this, because it's always an interesting conversation to have about how we landed in this. But fundamentally, South Africa, of course, set out a very ambitious national determined contribution. And, as South Africa, we simply don't set a NDC target and then we don't work towards achieving that. And part of the conversation was how is it that we can mobilize from a policy point of view, develop a more coherent strategy, mobilize resources, and work with a whole range of state and non-state actors to be able to achieve that. At that particular time, there was a few international partners, the British, particularly the EU, the French, the Germans, and the US, leading on that, who came to us and said, well, we're an international partner group and we want to work with you. We don't want to undermine the UNFCCC framework around climate finance, but we want to work with you to see whether, on the basis of your NDC ambitions, can we support your climate financing or your climate ambition by financing some of this. And of course, that culminated in a very important historical agreement between the heads of state that was concluded at the Dublin COP and announced. What followed then was that we then specifically then worked on a whole series of interventions, and most importantly, we decided to take a very ambitious task. We said, okay, if we have the 2030 targets, what do we need to do to be able to achieve 350 to 420, right? And of course, what we thought was a unique opportunity was to basically say, if there was a commitment of $8.5 billion US, and that's a combination of grant, highly concessional funding, private money, from a range of different, organizations, direct from, various MDBs, others from, government funding through their fiscal support, others through guarantee schemes, and a whole series of this. Combination, very complex space. I have no idea how it works, right? But we have clever people like these who break it down for us, and they'll explain how this looks like. We then said, let's cost it and develop an investment plan. And we said we didn't want to do an investment plan for the entire transition. We wanted to develop an investment plan for 5 years. Lo and behold, we always said that we think that, transitions are expensive. And of course, after costing that investment plan that specifically focused on 3 key areas, right? There were other areas as well. Focus firstly on energy, on electricity, because as you obviously know, many South Africans that are here, that's the largest carbon sector emitter, 42% of total emissions. So if you decarbonize the energy sector, the way we produce energy, it automatically reduces the carbon intensity in other parts of the economy that relies on electricity, which is everyone, right? So energy, electricity in particular, including investment in transmission, was a critical area. The second area was we had quite an advanced manufacturing sector around automotives, and we felt it was important given the new emerging, mobility and vehicles, that new energy vehicles was an important sector as well. And repurposing and retooling, for example, given that we've spent a huge amount of money in producing and developing our vehicle sector, we could do that. And then we said there are new opportunities, green hydrogen, given where we sit, the resources, the natural resources, rare earth minerals, and a whole series of things. And in developing this plan, we then costed it, right? 1.4 trillion rand. And I thought, oh my goodness me, where are we going to get that money? That was about $90 billion US. So we short a whole $80 billion US, if I round it off nicely. So costing transitions as it is was an expensive exercise, and for us that's quite important and why we needed to mobilize on this. Following that, we said, well, even if we are not able to mobilize the full set of resources, right, why is it that we're not able to implement parts of it in the areas that we've identified in the investment plan? And so, of course, after taking that to Cabinet in 2022 and 2023, we took the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, implementation plan. And this is some of the unique stuff that Jared will talk around about actually implementing some of the commitments that were there. But it focused on 6 key areas. We said energy or electricity. We said NEVs. We said green hydrogen. We also said, given the impact that decarbonization would have in relation to closing or decommissioning 13 of our 15 coal power fire stations in one province, you'd have to look at the province of Mpumalanga. That's quite critical. So we also said that we needed to look at the specific just energy transitions there, bottom-up approach. We also said we needed to look at municipalities that are there, but specifically the ability and the shifting evolution in the distribution sector and how one looks at energy generation and the impact that revenue may have. And the last and sixth area was, of course, skills, and this was quite an important part. We've, of course, evolved the work, and I think a lot of energy has been put into thinking around how one utilizes this in a manner that has a most significant impact, and that's quite important for us in doing this. So, a long story, right? I told you, right? I warned you guys. A long story, but I thought that many of you need to understand the historical context for us to be able to get to this. Now, I mean, we can boast and successfully say that we still remain one of the few countries, or potentially still the only country, that has developed such a comprehensive investment plan with an implementation program, and actually partnering with stakeholders. Because ultimately, the essence of this was to have a cross-government strategy, partnering within government and across government. And the presidency has been able to play that role quite centrally in ensuring that we move in the same direction. Contestation always remains around these ideas. Contestation always remains around the issues of what sort of energy choices that we make. The point about it is that the South African government has taken policy choices that are important and introduces trade-offs in regard to that. And I think that's an important part. So a stakeholder-driven, cross-government, policy coherence, centrality of coordination has been quite an important part of the work that we've done, and we've been able to successfully implement where we are right now. Albeit it been slow, and of course we've thrown a curveball suddenly. The USA has formally written a very nice letter to us and said, we are withdrawing. That was the letter, right? And fine, it's okay. And people then ask the question, so, okay, with the geopolitical changes that are happening, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. We continue the course. There are other partners that continue to see the same vision and development trajectory that we do, and that's the basis of us to be able to partner on that. So certainly $1 billion, that was not grant funded. It was not either fiscal transfer. It was not a DPO. It was, DFC money. Sorry, couldn't get to the acronym. And so, of course, we continue. Many years later, of course, what has happened is a successful extension of that partnership. So we've seen many other countries joining up, and even today, non-state actors also joining up in being able to support us. The amount of funding that has become available, excluding the US, has jumped from $8.5 billion to just under $12.6 billion US. And there continue to be a whole series of different funders who continue to see that particular objective that we've set ourselves as a country. So, with those, sort of long context-setting comments, I want to introduce Zama, and for her to speak about specifically the experiences from the PCC in their role that they played around looking at country platforms, mobilizing finance, and the strong partnership that we have between the presidency and the Presidential Climate Commission in achieving that objective.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is a privilege for me to address you on behalf of the Presidential Climate Commission alongside the JETS PMU in the presidency. Our collective mission is to explore pathways mobilizing climate finance at scale in South Africa, ensuring that our transition is not only green, but it's also inclusive. The PCC itself serves as a convener, an advisor, and an accountability mechanism in South Africa's climate transition. We are tasked with ensuring that the just transition is truly just, It's socially inclusive, environmentally sustainable, and also economically viable. Climate finance is not just a tool for our ambitions, it is central to ensuring that no one is left behind as we decarbonize and adapt. Yet, we face a fragmented financing landscape, one that is not well tailored to the complexities of emerging markets, particularly in South Africa, and the lived realities of affected communities. The PCC's recent SA Climate Finance Landscape Mapping Report provides a comprehensive overview of South Africa's climate finance ecosystem, and there are some key findings included in there. The first key finding is around the predominance of mitigation finance. So approximately 81% of climate finance is allocated to mitigation efforts, primarily in renewable energy projects, while only 12% supports adaptation initiatives. And despite the high levels of pledges, disbursements are still slow and inaccessible for local implementers, particularly municipalities and community-based organizations. The other finding relates to limited grant funding, with merely 5% of South Africa's climate finance coming from grants, which highlights a reliance on loans and private investments. And we know that concessional funding is critical for adaptation and also social investments. The other challenge we picked up was the municipal access challenge, with substantial entities facing significant barriers in accessing climate finance due to limited technical capability in putting projects together and lack of creditworthiness. Our key findings from the financing report also highlight other areas that there's a clear pipeline challenge because projects lack the early stage preparation support, making it very difficult to then crowd in private capital to commercialize. Most critically, there's also a trust gap, both between funders and recipients and across levels of government. So the message is clear. We need to simplify, coordinate, and reorient climate finance to align with just transition principles. So I really did say that I would speak about a country platform. I'll get into a little bit about what a country platform is and what it means for SA. So the country platform is not a single institution or a facility. It's rather a coordinated interface between South Africa and the global finance infrastructure, climate finance infrastructure. It enables us to present a coherent investment proposition aligned with national plans and built on robust local priorities. From the PCC's perspective, a resilient country platform must be transparent and inclusive, with room for civil society, labor, business, and local government. It must also be flexible and responsive and able to be agile and align to new financing streams with changing needs. It also must be outcome-based, not only focused on carbon metrics, but also focused on social justice and developmental outcomes. The PCC sees the country platform as a governance innovation, a chance to build trust, coherence, and leverage at a national scale. So there are two mechanisms that I'd like to talk to that are critical in maturing country platform. The first is the Just Transition Financing Mechanism, also referred to as the JTFM, which is designed to coordinate stakeholders across government, finance, civil society, with the aim of aligning investment priorities with transition objectives. And the JTFM anchors funding decisions in transparency and equity. The second mechanism is the Just Adaptation and Resilience Investment Plan, which is focused on mobilizing finance for adaptation projects that seek to enhance resilience, particularly for municipalities, nature-based solutions, and also climate-vulnerable communities through targeted investment priorities. These platforms serve as a facilitative structure that reduces fragmentation and channels existing and new resources effectively, ensuring that transparency, inclusivity, and alignment with national priorities is achieved. There's an urgent need to address critical funding gaps In our analysis, we've identified several pressing financing gaps. I've mentioned the first one, which is the adaptation underfunding, with only 12% of climate finance directed towards adaptation, and so there's a significant shortfall for projects that actually build community resilience. Second is the support for local projects that have high social impact, and these initiatives include worker reskilling and community-owned renewable energy projects, which often lack access to finance due to the perceived high risks. The third refers to the municipal financing constraints, with municipalities struggling to access climate finance, which hinders the level of implementation at local authority level of just transition projects. And addressing these gaps requires innovative financing mechanisms such as the Just Transition Financing Mechanism and the Municipal Just Energy Transition Support Program, which includes blended finance, concessional loans, and increased grant funding. In mobilizing international support of South Africa's just energy transition, launched in COP26, we secured, as Rudy mentioned, the 8.5 billion from international partners, and we've seen recent challenges, including the withdrawal of the US with its circa $1 billion withdrawal. But the partnership remains the cornerstone of South Africa's climate finance strategy, and the EU has reaffirmed its commitment, announcing 4.7 billion investment package to support South Africa's just energy transition. So these international collaborations are vital in leveraging additional resources and expertise to support South Africa's transition. And as we approach the G20 summit under the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainable development, these sessions are actually pivotal in shaping our national and global climate finance strategies. And our country platform can be a beacon for what climate finance reform can look like, driven by national priorities, grounded in justice, and oriented towards resilience. We need our global partners to come to the table, not just with more finance, but with better finance, which is simpler, fairer, concessional, and tailored to our developmental needs. And we see that our country platform actually is a reactive stance to a position of leadership. So in conclusion, financing South Africa's just transition is a shared responsibility, and it requires coordinated efforts, innovative solutions, inclusive participation. And I then would like to say in conclusion, let us commit to building a resilient, inclusive, and sustainable future for all South Africans. Let us work together across sectors, borders, and turn this platform into the launch pad for transformation and not just a transition. Thank you.
Thanks, Zama. I know you didn't want to clap for me, but at least clap for Zama. Jared? Sorry, Zama. You want to come up here right now? Yeah, of course. Before I get in trouble with my bosses, I forgot to say that you'll see sheets of paper on your seat there, right? Salim, don't throw them on the floor. It's very important. They have QR codes on there, and they basically scan it, of course, and it has the JET PMU documents relating to the JET investment plan and implementation plan, right? The reports. Am I correct? Oh, the framework. Yeah. I got it all wrong. Okay. Thank you so much. Jared, over to you.
Is it working? Yeah, good. Before I get into any of the detail, I met the F20 team at Baku at COP last year, Katrine. I just wanted to congratulate you. I think it's a wonderful event. We spoke about it at a conceptual level last year. I've been sitting in for the last 2 days. It's just been wonderful to listen to the various speakers and panels, and I've had such rich discussions outside as well, so congratulations. So I joined the JET.
Presenting slides, right?
I am, yeah. Oh, you need to, okay. Yeah, that's fair. I joined the Just Energy Transition Projects Management Unit, or JPMU, as a financing specialist. I'm an investment banker by background, and I was sitting here yesterday during the blended finance session, and I saw the term greedy financier come up quite often. And so you may think I joined the team because of all the billions and trillions. But the reality is, I think the just energy transition is the most important topic of my generation. And I think it's hugely exciting, and I'm just really grateful to be part of the team and contributing towards it. I've heard a lot about grant financing. Zama, you brought it up again, and I completely agree. At a level, we do need more grant financing. We also need to make sure that whatever grant financing we mobilize gets directed effectively. So it's not just about getting more grant financing, it's about making sure we're able to direct that grant financing to the credible opportunities that need that form of capital. And so there's a big judgment call within that. And it's in that context that we imagined this idea of a jet funding platform in 2023. It was included in the jet implementation plan, which Rudy alluded to, and was endorsed by Cabinet as one of the mechanisms. Now, I need to be really clear on that. It's not the only mechanism, it's one of the mechanisms to mobilize more grant funding and to ensure that grant funding gets... let's get this ticker to work, yeah. And to ensure that grant funding gets directed effectively, which I just explained why that's so important. So there's a bit of a journey on the screen. I'm not going to speak directly to every point on the screen. I think Rudy's covered some of that in some detail. But I think it's important to say that the JET funding platform is not a fund. We have to continuously remind people this. And you'll see in a few slides, and as we go through the detail, why we think the model that we've adopted is much more exciting. It's a difficult point to understand. I just need to re-emphasize it. It's not a fund. It's not a bank account. The model that we've developed is a matchmaking model. And what do I mean by matchmaking? Let me just get really, really practical on it. We want to find projects. We want to find credible JET projects, and I'll get into a bit more detail in that right now. And we want to match those projects to sources of grant finance. So Rudy's mentioned the International Partner Group. They've made an initial pledge of grant financing, but it is becoming very clear that we need to diversify those funding sources. So we want to be able to go and take a range of projects to a broader set of funders, including not just MDBs and DFIs, but philanthropies and corporates as well. And we think there's going to be great opportunity in doing that. So why matchmaking? Okay, we believe that by matchmaking, you create a direct relationship between the project applicant and the grant funder. And we think that's really important in the long term, because a lot of the grant funders that we've spoken to have told us, we're really interested in the just energy transition. We just have no idea what it is. So we need time. We need time to engage with the opportunities, to understand the opportunities, and to build it into our strategy. So our belief is that if we do this, if we do our job well, we'll be able to create these direct relationships, and we will be able to create a much more efficient mechanism for grant funding to flow going forward. What do I mean by credible JET projects? So firstly, on screen, you can see some of the constituents that we want to support: SMMEs, community-based organizations, etc. But in terms of how we've gone about looking for these, we've run application windows. We've had 2 application windows to date, and we've received a number of applications, which I'll take you through some of that detail just now. when we get those applications, we take it through a process of due diligence where we try and understand, firstly, is the project related to the just energy transition? What is the probability of the impact being realized? Are these applicants in good standing? So from a KYC perspective, etc. And finally, are these the types of projects that grant funders are likely to fund? And what I mean by that is there a strong enough mandate alignment in terms of our understanding of the various funders? And we think that by doing this, we will develop a project register which will have a list of projects, and I'll show you just now how many projects are on it. And we can go to these funders, we can start engaging on real projects so that they can better understand where their appetite sits. And I think I see a number of funders in front of me, so you're well aware of the process that we're running at the moment. Rudy, I think you've covered a lot of this background, but I think what I will say is that our international partner group provided that initial pledge, but this work is a lot more than just financial resources, and I think it's really important, and we're really grateful to still have the international partner group working with us closely on supporting the JET funding platform, not just with financial resources, but with non-financial resources as well. I'm gonna just go back one slide because I did forget a really important point, and it's not something that I often speak about, so it's probably the first time Rudy's hearing about it. But the reason we felt so strongly about matchmaking is, in essence, we think it's a model to bring people together. We think it's a model that creates visibility, and I joined the session this morning where I think Paula spoke about there is no transmission and transformation without trust. And we think bringing people together is going to be a big part of rebuilding trust. And if we can overlay transparency on that, we start creating the environment where we can start enabling the transition and unlocking transformational outcomes for South African society. So I just wanted to touch on that before I move on into some of the detail. In terms of me referring to alignment to the just energy transition, the types of projects we look for, clearly, aligned to some of the energy opportunities, specifically around renewable energy. We also do look at some of the transition opportunities, and these are the attributes we're looking for in projects in terms of climate impact. But we do importantly consider attributes in projects that enable the just transition as well. So projects that focus on skills development, projects that focus on supporting communities, and projects that focus on supporting labor, reskilling, upskilling, etc. So a lot of focus on that when we work through the projects and understand the impact and the alignment to the JET. So where are we? As I mentioned, in 2023, we imagined this. We've run now 2 application windows. We launched the funding platform in October last year. We received around 240 applications in the first 2 windows. So I think really, really positive, right? To see the level of interest. And as we go through the projects, it's clear to see the potential that exists from a just energy transition point of view. At the moment, we've got 15 projects on the register. So from the 240, we take the projects to the due diligence phase, and we're currently sitting at 15. So that's a very low conversion ratio. And it's something that the team feels uncomfortable about. We've got a list of learnings that we've taken from the first 2 windows, and we are totally committed to applying those learnings in the upcoming windows. So in the upcoming windows, you're going to see a lot more focus in terms of specific themes, which we think is going to make it a lot easier for applicants to apply. We think we're going to get to much more efficient outcomes in terms of getting to a project register that has the types of projects that will allow us to reach those objectives in terms of creating more efficient grant funding and access to grant funding going forward. What I will say is that we're not a very big team in the funding platform, to be honest. 3 people. And I think just to take this moment on stage and congratulate Nunu and Carmen, who have been working with me. The Deputy Mayor mentioned yesterday, Rudy, stewards, and the fact that there were stewards who walked in these gardens for many years. And I think these two have really reflected those attributes of being a steward. They've really put incredible work towards this. And the reason I say that is I think there are a few applicants in the room today that have applied to the funding platform. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of you have received a letter, which is not so lekker, that states that you didn't make it through the due diligence process. And I really, really invite those applicants to stay with us in this process. It's a steep learning curve. We're going to continuously get better. There's going to be future application windows, and we'd really want to invite you to re-engage with those application windows when they come about. Finally, on the funders, we've had really good engagement with a range of funders. It's great to see the interest. We had a wonderful breakfast this morning with a set of local philanthropies and international philanthropies. And we're going to be working on a new pooled mechanism as well to make it easier for the funders to aggregate their funding commitments, to work together, and to start creating a bit of community in terms of ensuring that the just energy transition is able to access the required level of grant funding. Thank you.
So I've got to thank him, right? Because this is he didn't apply for a post, right? He said he's really interested in wanting to work, and the bank had offered to second him, right? Now you know what investment bankers earn, right? And what we can pay, right? So I mean, I just think that's the phenomenal opportunity that he's given, and the opportunity cost and foregone income simply around this banker's commitment to drive a very exciting thing. The nice thing about the team is that they've also taken risks, right? This is a complex thing, right? Because you could easily do what others are doing. It could easily be interpreted that we're doing what a CSI, kind of fund is doing at Standard Bank, Tutwa. Sorry if there's anyone from Tutwa Consulting over here, Tutwa Foundation, right? Or any one of the others. But it's very different and unique. And the learning curve is such as we genuinely express that, it's an iterative process. It's something new. We've not done this before. And so the panel will pull that out a little bit more, thinking about creative ways to deal with this. One other thing you didn't mention is that one of the issues that I've always emphasized to them is to think about our own experience around project preparation and project submissions, that we tend to lack the capacity to write good project proposals, and particularly when you're targeting that group, right? And you saw that. They don't have a project team writing up complex proposals with having to cost and getting it to what you term in the banking world as bankable projects. And so project preparation is quite an important part of the work going forward, and trying to get through to someone that has an excellent idea that really is well aligned to the just energy transition, but has developed a fairly poor proposal and it doesn't look or makes any sense, but putting them through a system that we are able to support that. And that's something that I think we'll build in and improve as we go along. Thank you, Zama. Thank you, Gerard, for excellent inputs and setting that stage. May I invite the panelists in? Salim, Sarah, Mohammed. Mohammed, you don't mind if I call you Mohammed and then Dr. Anslim? Is that fine? Okay. So we'll do a couple of questions and we'll ask them. And explore some of the stuff that the two of them had presented, but more sort of in a realistic way, sort of where are we in the kind of both national and international global space, right? And giving our learnings that we've done thus far, Are there new ideas? Or there's something different that we can look at? So I want to just sort of, for all of you, right? So we don't have a lot of time. I'm the one that speaks a lot, right? So I'll minimize it. But I'm saying to you, because I've got the power of the mic, we want you to be as pointed as possible. But given the increasing global, complexity around financial flows, particularly some of the monies that have been diverted to other interests. Now, we won't speak about that, right? What are the sort of current, looking at the current geopolitical environment, right? So what are the sort of opportunities, if there are, or the potential risks, right? And how does it look? How does that look for South Africa in terms of mobilizing finance? So maybe, Salim, you start off first.
You ask me first.
Yeah, I'm asking you first,
yes. I'm not so pessimistic. This sounds contradictory from the other 2 days, or other day I was here. But I think the retraction of the US has had an impact, and you can see that on the veto against the Climate Investment Fund, the allocation from that was promised to South Africa. I think what we have to be clear on is that the JETP's requirements can't be fulfilled by just public finance. So there's a lot of work by the team to look at how to structure and make progress a lot more, like particularly on the grid side. And the minister's working very hard in his team. They've had visits to Brazil, India, to look at how they have mobilized private capital. In a funny way, there's a fragmentation in the world. For example, we engage a lot with the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. And what we've noticed, because we're about to engage with them on not just South Africa, but a whole set of other countries, is they're set up to support investments in Asia, but they're rapidly expanding their programs outside of Asia, and they're starting to sign agreements and also solicit membership from African countries. So they're starting to see opportunity. So the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank is also looking at this. And then there's a whole, the Global Gateway Initiative has allocated to South Africa. It seems the timing is very interesting, as you notice, post-February. There's a €4 billion commitment to South Africa, and we've signed a partnership agreement with the Clean Trade Investment Platform. So you start seeing this starting to come into play. And I visited China about 2-3 weeks ago. I visited the BRI-GC, which is the BRI Green Coalition. They're looking to set up something called the Green Finance Investment Platform. At the moment, it's just a lot of talk, but they're looking at projects. The main things that I think we are struggling with, a lot of the way to create opportunities to actually engage different governments and other players to figure out how best to create the demand for capital, despite FOCAC and all of that. So I think there are lots of things that we need, and I'm surprised that even the JETP team haven't looked at outside of the normal IPG. Yeah,
it has. Okay. But I think your point is spot on, because I think what you are saying is that there is a significant risk. Right. So traditional forms of funding we're seeing limitations, but there are so much more opportunities elsewhere that I think is there. So what do you think? I mean, is that similarly from where you sit in the PCC, that there are more opportunities than risks given the kind of change in global dynamics from a financing point of view?
Yeah, and Rudy, in other quarters, my other name is Dora.
Sorry, can I call you Sarah? Sorry, Dora.
It's like Rick's. No, you got Sarah.
Oh, so
Okay, no, thank you. You will owe me dinner for that. Yeah, thanks. I think, and thanks to Zama and Gerard, because we really laid a great foundation for this discussion in terms of where we are and where we would like to go. So just to start off more to your question about the current opportunities and risks, what we've seen with the current global geopolitical dynamics, as outlined by Salim, whilst we understand that the pockets have reduced a bit in terms of finance flows that would be coming in, what we are also seeing is that those partners that would have been a bit conservative are now raising levels of ambition. So we are seeing commitment by those, and I think in these circles we call ourselves coalition of the willing, those that are willing to push forward, really moving ahead. So there's a real opportunity there. Another key big opportunity that we are seeing is now we are moving more ambitiously around diversifying funding sources and tapping more into domestic sources. And we actually see even your national development banks coming forward more ambitiously, and more so even private sector. So a space which we wouldn't have moved in exploring at a more accelerated pace, we are now doing that. So that is a great opportunity from where I'm sitting. Key risks for us is that, especially as we venture more into just getting private sector to be more and more involved, but then also drawing more also on those resources from DFIs and so forth, we will see increasing levels of loans, which then have got a key risk in terms of our sovereign debt. So how we then stack the resources that we bring in such that we don't increase the debt burden that we currently have becomes quite a critical thing. So in the work that we are doing now in creating or even enhancing the country platforms that we have, JET IP, we've spoken a lot about it, but I'll speak a bit later in terms of what we are doing now on additional work. But as we bring that in, how do we reduce the debt burden as we ensure
Dora.
financing? Thank you.
Sorry for calling you Sarah Dora. I'm calling you Dora whole day today.
You are not forgiven yet.
And now I'm calling, I know, yes. I'll make it up. Mohammed, I mean, you involved in the financing sphere from a DFI point of view. Must be interesting times also for the bank itself. What is your perspective on some of the global and geopolitical changes that are there in terms of risk and opportunity for the banks itself, and what are the sort of opportunities? I think both Dora and Salim's point about mobilizing different forms of internal capital, but also looking elsewhere are useful points.
So I think from a development finance institution, and especially as a public development bank, unlike a multilateral development bank, we have a very, local context, So I think we still see a lot of opportunities in terms of mobilizing climate finance, whether it's from your UNFCCC mechanisms, etc. So that's still there, despite, the withdrawal of commitments from the likes of US. But you often see, especially EU member states coming in, to fill that type of gap. So we don't see any major change in terms of the work that we are doing in terms of mobilizing, the UN funds. But I think the question is, how do we complement that, with, for example, the Just Transition Platform and the role of public development banks in the context of a JT platform. So you have all these commitments from countries, but, how are the funds going to flow and how are projects going to be implemented? And I believe public development banks as well as MDBs, can play a key role, in terms of, as I said, they understand the local finance market. They can provide local currency lending, which can be a challenge in terms of how funds flow from international donors to South Africa, and with regulations restricting, financiers from lending in hard currency. Forex risk is quite a key issue. So I think the important role of, national development banks or regional development banks to address that type of risk in deploying, some of the funds, whether it's through the JT platform, is going to be quite key. And just harnessing on the track record that they have with, even in the municipal space, which we all know is extremely challenging. You know, the under-resourced municipalities, they don't even have support to even develop concepts, let alone pre-feasibility studies. You spoke about preparation support. But we find that a lot of municipalities don't even have the ability to develop just the concepts before you even start, you know, the early stage of project development. So I think for us, it's important to understand what are the key roles of all the stakeholders, you know, including your development finance institutions, your trade unions, project developers, of course, local government as well, in the context of this JT platform. And just use that systems approach in terms of then saying, look, this is where you fit in. And I think through that, you can effectively deploy the funds and leverage private sector funding as well, which we've done, you know, I believe, you know, quite well in terms of the programs we've developed where you crowd in you use concessional finance from GCF and crowd in private sector funding.
Thanks, Mohammed. I think that's a really useful way. Slim, I mean, it's tough in Europe today, right? It's tough for all of us, I suppose. But one of the things that the AFD has always stood by, and the French government has been to over and above what you initially committed, to give more, and specifically to focus on the just component. You know, changing governments in Europe, the conflict in Europe, the changing geopolitics, and whether that in itself presents a potential risk from an AFD point of view, or from a Europe point of view, or do you think that provides us greater opportunity also? You know.
Yeah. So I may say that I quite agree that, you know, we are, you know, witnessing a deep trend since 2022, and particularly since the beginning of this year, with regard the global fragmentation. And actually, the real question is whether this fragmentation will lead to greater competition among actors for access to climate finance, or conversely, whether it might result to increase the cooperation with actors. And actually, so we are all agreed that the US exit from the South African JP is definitely regrettable. It's a pity. But I think that it also it is a good opportunity for the current IPG International Partners Group to strongly reaffirm their commitment to support the just energy transition. And I agree with what you were saying, Selim, before, that the US exit could be seen as an opportunity. It's quite positive. Why? Because actually, so it could lead to reshape new coalition with new actors to support the energy transition. And this coalition could be countries, but could be also public development banks. So, yeah, let's take it as a positive pathway.
Let's stay this, Slim, because I want to ask you specifically on the AFD itself, right? And what is the AFD thinking in relation to the various forms of financing, grant funding, concessional financing, as you see this kind of pivot in the global south, you know? Yeah. And is the AFD, you know, still geared for that? Do you think it's an approach that the AFD still will continue, as South Africa, for instance, prioritizes and pragmatically try and deal with its transition?
Yeah. So actually, what I can say is that there is definitely a clear shift, you know, from, let's say, a donor-driven model towards an alignment with country-led priorities, and this is key, actually. So I can provide you with a short example. So in IFD, so our strategy here in South Africa is based on two main pillars. And these two main pillars are definitely aligned with the country priorities. First pillar is to support the just energy transition. Second pillar is to tackle the multidimensional inequalities. And at the core of this mandate, we are definitely committed to support cooperation based on the local need with a political anchor. And this is quite key. And the other point that also I would like to mention is that the concessional resources had been used in a more catalytic way because, the idea is no longer to just, provide low-interest loan or grants. No, it's also how to find the opportunity to unlock private capital. And in that sense, I strongly believe that, the implementation plan or the JET investment plan is also a good way to use part of the concessional funding in order to unlock, in order to catalyze private capital to implement the investment plan.
Thanks, Tim. That's really excellent. One of our stronger partners that have been with us from the beginning. Dora, tell us a little bit about the lessons learned on the Just Transition framework mechanism, and how can we use it more effectively to influence G20 outcomes on finance for climate?
It's a big word. Thank you. Zama mentioned earlier on the issue of the JTFM that the Presidential Commission developed. And that framework, the finance mechanism that looks at how are we going to finance a just transition from a lens of development and social justice. And moving beyond energy. So whilst, and by the way, I'm happy we are also on the stage with JET PMU, by the way, because there's always confusion between who the JET PMU is and who the Presidential Climate Commission is. Two bodies, one family. One family. But JET PMU very clearly implementing a very specific mandate on energy transitions, which is very clear. But for the PCC now, we thought over and above the energy transitions work, there's so much that needs to happen. We still need resources for adaptation and resilience. We still need resources to finance social justice. So what we've learned since the JTFM was developed, and it's still, the implementation is still underway in a modular manner, is that it assisted us in improving alignment and national ownership, so aligning different initiatives and actions. So whilst now the JET, the energy transitions work is now clear-cut and well-developed, we've now moved the next step to then say, let's work on an adaptation and resilience framework or investment mechanism and start defining how is it that these funds will flow at different levels and where the funds will be coming from and how we then partner with different organizations. Bringing in the issue of national ownership, where we're now working very closely with DBSA to then develop and anchor that financing facility within DBSA, which uses, by the way, mainly DFI funding to attract and catalyze other resources from private, also even from within DBSA, but most importantly, also from government. What is the role of government departments and how will National Treasury fit in providing that? What it also did for us is to then also outline clear governance frameworks and consultations at a very early stage, getting buy-in at a very, very early stage of developing these concepts. So a very unique role of the PCC is to think of and hold conversations on things that no one else would have thought of before or no one else would have done, so that we propel and accelerate action. And therefore, the early stage social compacting becomes very important. So in implementing what's in our JTFM, we brought in that social component mechanism that is quite very strong, and ensuring flexibility on instruments, on flexible financial instruments that come in. Let's talk quickly about G20.
Quickly. Yeah.
1 minute. Remember, you still owe me.
Uh-oh.
So after the 1 minute, then we are
Give her the 1 minute.
If you're going over the minute, I'm back to Sarah, right?
Yes, you're back to Sarah. What we are pushing forward with partners towards G20, so we are anchored already in the Sustainable Finance Working Group of the G20, and ensuring that discussions around country platforms are anchored in there, and it goes through to G20 resolutions. And we are working in parallel also as we move towards COP30, working with the COP30 presidency on the Baku to Belém roadmap to try and get to establish more and more country-led platforms that are balanced, that go beyond mitigation, now into adaptation and resilience. So what we will see as we move towards COP30 and G20 now is now the unleashing of an adaptation and resilience country platform framework. Thank you.
I'll stick to Dora.
Thank you.
Salim, I mean, your organization, philanthropies, and your organization in particular has been so central in supporting this, right? I mean, to be frank, I mean, he's a dear friend of mine. We know each other from many, many years. And without the commitment in supporting both the Presidential Climate Commission and the Presidential PMU, we would not have gotten to the point where we are. And given the kind of changes that are happening, what is your kind of take, more or less, around, philanthropy and the view and the role that they can play, right? And more so about, how do we gain this more? How do we, continue the momentum and build sustainability, at least long-term sustainability around financing for climate and the kind of country platform that we've set up?
So from our side, I can't talk for other philanthropies because we are a pool fund governed by a particular strategy that the funders are keen for us to move forward on, and they are very interested in the key question we're trying to address is what I talked about yesterday. Is if you try to look at enclave economies where you have high dependency on natural resource and commodity trade, oil and gas, minerals, etc. Danger that South Africa could also go there if we're not careful. What do we do to enhance electrification? But it's not just about green electrons, but really about expanding and diversifying the economy. So I think you can't talk about country platforms without a vision for what that economy needs to look like outside of its dependency on, this boom and bust dependency on commodities, because it's not really helping these countries. And you can see, for example, during COVID, economies that were very diversified had more resilience than economies that were highly dependent. And as you know, the high level of debt that we have at the moment, which is historical, still has to be resolved. Your work on country platforms have to solve the big questions around what the nature of the economy needs to look like in the future. It's not just about climate. It's about linking investments to changing the structure of the economy. And that's really the vision we are working on. The good news is we have backing of our board, our funders. We're doing that in 10 countries, or we're trying to do it in 10 countries. I'm not so hung up about country platforms. I'm more interested in investment flow that can lead to catalyzing structural change.
And that's quite important because it's less about specific projects, but it's more about the institutional changes that are required for us to move in the kind of growth trajectory that is more ecological or sustainable, right? And I think that's a really great way.
If I may just quickly, we're working with 2 or 3 countries, actually with UNECA, where we look at we're supporting 2 countries now, look at debt in the debt management unit, doing reprofiling of their debt. And there are basic things. A lot of people blame, outsiders for their debt problem, but there's also a lot of internal issues like automating information between the central bank and treasury on who holds debt, because different entities within the state are borrowing, but there isn't a clear sense of a big picture. Some of the debt service costs are very high, and trying to fix also basic ability to enhance tax collection. So all of these things help to improve the credit ratings, improve the fiscal resilience, and it enables them to do more, not only for social programs, but also to back up new investments that are credible. So country platforms have to give visibility to new investments, but also ensure the government is able to do good with the money, or whether it's the private sector as well.
Wonderful. Mohammed, I mean, you saw Jared's slide around, developing a credible project pipeline that we always struggle with, right?
Yes.
So I won't say we have tons of money, but we have sufficient capital available for credible projects, but we never get that pipeline going. And I think your point earlier on around using concessional financing or financing that we have to lock in private sector. But tell us a little bit about how DBSA is developing that credible project pipeline and de-risking, particularly that kind of capital that's available.
So I think, Rudy, we often find that we have existing de-risking facilities, and I can list quite a few, specifically on either climate mitigation, adaptation, where the primary objective is to crowd in, private sector to support, for example, water reuse projects in the municipal space to address water scarcity in South Africa, or programs to promote embedded generation projects, solar PV and wind projects for both private and public sector. The reality is not everyone can access those facilities because you need, the word bankable business case or a business plan. So I think for me, rather than trying to list, what's required to have a bankable business plan, I think the important thing is to understand the project value chain and who operates at the different stages of that value chain. So, we have, for example, a project preparation unit within the bank, but that intervention only comes in once you've done pre-feasibility studies. We don't fund pre-feasibility. So you already should come, with a pre-feasibility study.
I have so many complaints about not being funding pre-feasibility studies.
No, exactly.
Tell me about it.
So, and the other issue is, applicants often complain that here we go again, funders want us to do a feasibility studies. We don't have the support for that. Unfortunately, you can't get away from those requirements, especially if you want to bring in private sector as well. They need to at least understand, is this project going to be viable? But I think beyond just understanding that value chain and ensuring there is effective coordination amongst the different funders across that value chain. So we would, for example, have partners that can fund the very early stage development, even the concept development, then bringing the likes of, whether it's UK Pact, ICI, etc., to do some of the pre-feasibility studies. And then, those projects then feed into our project preparation pipeline where we do actual, very detailed feasibility studies. But more importantly, beyond just the technical assessments, is the capacity to actually implement those projects on the ground. Are the institutional arrangements in place? Do they have, if you're dealing with the municipality, do they have council resolution? So sometimes we often forget those elements because you can have all these fantastic technical studies, but nothing gets off the ground because there's no buy-in from the municipality. There's no capacity to actually implement those projects. So one also needs to ensure that you also capacitate the municipalities if they're the target beneficiary where possible. So we do try and assist where we can across those aspects. And I think one thing to also consider is how do we embed, JT elements, climate elements, the social aspects at the very early stage of development. So once again, in the municipal space, we often assist municipalities with infrastructure master plans. Historically, these master plans never took, climate change into account, and we've already seen the impact of extreme weather events on infrastructure in KZN.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do now is assist these municipalities with vulnerability assessments, to see how can we improve resilience in the context of infrastructure at the planning stage. So by the time they develop these concepts based on infrastructure plans that are cognizant of the impact of climate change, it helps our cause in terms of mobilizing climate finance, because their requirement is what the climate rationale.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important to understand that value chain and bringing those elements as early as possible.
I mean, the fact that you're able to use financing in a unique and innovative way is something that I think sometimes we don't explore. So we like traditional forms, right? We're happy to take grant funding. We're happy to take concessional or highly concessional funding.
Yeah.
We got a very sophisticated taxonomy, but not quite sophisticated in the kind of climate green financing, Yeah. I wonder if there's anyone that has a particular view on thinking through, other instruments. We've got a carbon tax. That's as far as it goes, right? And lots of conversation and thinking through on policy development, but not really going into it. Comments around transition bonds, carbon pricing, insurance-linked instruments. Are these also something that we need to explore and push the policy space a little bit more faster to look at? Salim? Slim?
You want to?
Yeah.
You want to respond to that question?
Oh, yeah, I can. So I fully agree that we need to definitely explore innovative financial instruments because of the fiscal constraints of such country in which we are operating, and because it's really complicated to use the sovereign loan as a key instrument. So that's why it's very important to explore new instruments. And for instance, in South Africa, what the National Treasury is doing with the support of the World Bank is the setup of a credit guarantee vehicle, which aim to provide a CGV, which aim to provide a guarantee for energy transition project. In order to unlock private capital and without affecting national treasury balance sheet. So I think there are lots of questions that are related to this mechanism, but I think it's an innovative instrument that we should consider, and maybe we can also, let's say, expand this kind of mechanism to address one of the key challenge of the country, which is the basic services delivery at the municipal level. And for instance, if we are considering, the establishment of a credit guarantee vehicle to address, municipal challenges, and also particularly to address the capacity issue at the municipal level, I think that this is something that we can also look at. And I would like also to mention another, very interesting example. So the JET PMU is doing an incredible work, and I strongly believe that the JET funding platform is also an innovative instrument. And Gerard, highlighted that it's really very, very important. So we're very supportive of this platform. Last point, maybe to highlight, is that under the financial common, the global network of PDB. So the FIX, set up an innovation lab, which is led by CPI, the Climate Policy Initiative, and the International Development Bank. And the FIX Innovation Lab aims to explore new financial tools, such as, debt, climate, nature, debt swap, and you mentioned a little bit that, or how to develop domestic carbon market.
Yeah.
And this innovation lab aims to disseminate knowledge, experience, among the PDB members. So I think that this is something that we can also,
Absolutely.
share. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lim. Others? Go ahead, Mohammed.
I think, Rudy, I'd just like to add, I think the important thing is, whilst there might be a lot of innovative instruments out there, whether it's transition bonds, sustainable linked bonds, or even blended finance, which we've used in other contexts, but I think in the context of funding JT, I think there has to be a proper characterization of the beneficiaries and the needs before you're solutioning for those instruments, because there might be instruments that has been, used in other contexts, but in our local context, it hasn't been adapted based on the needs that we've seen on the ground. So I think, whilst, there could be certainly opportunities with these instruments, I think there has to be that proper characterization and analysis in order for us to effectively solution, appropriate financial instruments.
Dora, you wanted to say? No, you covered?
Yes, and perhaps also it's also a parting shot to say everyone has a role to play, right, in climate financing. And just touching on something I mentioned yesterday, climate financing is not aid. It's strategic co-investment into a common future. So therefore, the different funders, and which is why we are pushing for country-led contextual platforms, because within that platforms we are able to do capital stacking, and therein each funder is able to have a particular role. So already Dr. Syed mentioned DBSA will not finance pre-feasibility. That space then we are saying, okay, the philanthropic community then comes in, and it goes like that to a point where we get to bankability and we are able to implement. So therefore, in any particular project, especially the high impact project, you would have various touch points where we might even have 4 or 5 funders that would see a particular intervention to the finish line.
I'm sorry, I don't have the time.
Oh, I have it here.
1 minute.
1 minute.
Really? Can I steal some time? Okay.
I just wanted to bounce off.
No, you're not helping me from stealing time. But bounce some. I wanted to just, I wanted to talk in your closing comments. I thought just for all of you again, just a little bit about the coordination thing and the complexity of, as you saw, Jared, Common, and Nunu, the complexity of everyone in the space. And the fact that sometimes you have got to duplicate efforts, very siloed sometimes. Funders want to be recognized versus not being part of a group. There are different rules, there are different funding mechanisms. How do we deal with that, right? That's the one part. In your closing 1 minute each, right? And then the second part is sort of, what sort of lesson can we impart for the philanthropies here, right? From a quick win. What would be the kind of thing that we could say to them around, whether they could champion some of the stuff that we are referring to and we're working towards, A practical thing that they can take home with them and think through, okay, this is really amazing. I think I want to sign up for this, right? Salim, you want to start off?
Yeah, sure.
So it's 2 parts, right?
I'm going to answer only one part. Is it all right?
Okay, you can answer one part.
I think on the... I would say that over the last 5 years, we have managed to convince a group of philanthropies that on the continent, we have to really think hard about not just the climate issue, but the broader developmental issue, and really try to look at the health of the fiscus, the way in which we can improve the macroeconomic environment, what kind of economic development trajectory do we try to stimulate, and what is the investment gap, and then how do we make investment possibilities happen. And a lot of the quick wins is really embedding good people in this, like we have done with the PMU, etc., and just getting the things going. There are no quick recipes, and I think there are lots of hurdles that...
I really want to get a comment from you on coordination. That's been a 5-year conversation between you and me about that.
A lot of proposals for country platforms, like you see in Brazil, etc., they have just too many things. What we are learning from this is you just try to focus on one thing and get confidence in that one thing getting right, and then you can start looking at broadening it.
Wonderful. Slim?
Yeah, so maybe how to avoid duplication, maybe. So first point, so definitely, again, the JTFP, I think it's really a good way to, to avoid fragmentation and duplication in supporting different JET-aligned projects. I would like also to mention, under the leadership of the GEAP and AFD, we are leading the Just and Skilled Technical Working Group, which aim to gather different donors in supporting the job creation, skills, and community inclusion. And I think that it's also a way to strengthen, let's say, our coordination and to avoid duplication. And in terms of quick win, yeah.
Let me hear. I want to hear the quick win from you.
So quick win. So maybe, as you may know, so last February, the Financial Climate Summit, what took place in Cape Town, and in the final statement of the fix, it was a point related to the ongoing establishment of a dialogue platform between philanthropics, foundations and public development banks.
Okay.
So if you guys are interested in knowing more about this ongoing work, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I would be more than happy to make the connection with the colleagues who are working in it.
Thank you, Slim. That's an excellent one. Mohammed?
I think from my perspective, it comes back to my first point around, how do we plug in the different role players in order to ensure you have an effective, country platform. And, as I already mentioned, the potential role of multilateral development banks, DFIs like ourselves. And I don't think there's necessarily misalignment in terms of understanding what they require, what we require, and even with philanthropies as well. I think it's just ensuring that each one understands, how they can, support the objectives of the platform in terms of, the outcomes that the platform aims to achieve. So I think for us, it's more around, and I think linked to the second issue around, where do philanthropies kind of fit in, is just going back to this whole issue of, looking at this as a system. And what is your contribution to ensure that there is a working modality to ensure we have a successful country platform?
Thanks. Dora, closing?
Hey, thank you. Yes, 2 points. The first one, from the institutional arrangements perspective, eliminating silos and selfish interests through having central coordinating bodies. And if I were to say that myself, just to give really accolade to our president for having had the JET PMU in the office of the president and the PCC that are, nobody can accuse these bodies because they're so centrally located of having to serve particular selfish interests, and they can pull in the different sectors to get the work done. The second one, the quick win, and it's linked to what Slim also said. I know there is a lot of work that's happening around having an international institutional platform that rallies around country platforms made up of different financiers. So just an invitation to the philanthropic community to be part of that. I know the WRI is doing a lot of work in coordinating and pulling everyone together so that whatever then comes out in terms of some institutional mechanism on how we are going to unleash and implement country platforms is informed by all of the key actors, including philanthropy. Thank you.
Thanks, Zora. Thanks, colleagues. It's been excellent, and let's give them a round of applause. Rich and diverse sets of views from different people working in this space. It's a really exciting space. We all know this is new to us, and we're not risk averse. We're taking the risk. We're looking at it. We're working in partnerships collectively, and we, looking at various instruments and pushing that policy and decision-making boundaries with our different partners to see what we can do next. But do I have still time for Q&A, or is it done? Have I used up all my time? I've used up all my time. Okay, I'm happy. Sorry, no time for Q&A, but I'm sure you can engage with each and every one of them going forward. Thanks so much.
All right, colleagues, as is our usual ritual, can the panel please come up just for a picture? As is our usual ritual, we have our coffee break now, and then we are on to our final stretch for the day. After the coffee break, we will be doing our lucky draw. So please do join us for that. Thank you.
جنة سبابا يا قلانا قوتو نتبرسي هندونين انققابي يا ما قليش عشنها فرسي سلالة قلوبا جمتنا باسا حرار كوني سلالة قلوبا جمتنا باسا حرار كوني نولجو ألقوما ما والدو بويا غران كوني أواشنا ما شكيسا يا نهيري أنا ما بجيسا 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 أواشنا ما شكيسا يا نهيري أنا
Itemu I jaloti, Jalia Lamila Baroti, Molubela Muela, Kusobefo.
About to start the lucky draw in just a minute. All right, once everyone's seated in the main room, we will begin the lucky draw. It's always a bit noisy over there. Waiting for people to make their way into. I did the bell and it. You want to do a.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone has enjoyed their amazing coffee break. So we're moving into our next session but before we do that, we have a little bit of a surprise for you. But if you guys can work with me and please, on the count of 1, 2, 3, we ululate. Sonke, sifike and arrive. On the count of 1, 2, 3. So we're about to do a really, really, really fun lucky draw, and I think now it's for the surprise. But so if you may do the honors, Rian.
So for our lucky draw, we have a very special guest. So I would like you to give a very warm welcome to Raisa and potentially our youngest participant for this year's Climate Solutions Forum. We always talk about youth and youth inclusion. So if Raisa and our youngest participant
can come up to the stage.
In a moment.
Can we please give them a round of applause, please?
All right, a round of applause, please.
So cute, just so pretty.
Okay. So we're doing the draw for the bingo draw for the prize. You have to read it. You read it.
Vimbini Chessie. Vimbai Chessie.
Do we have a Vimbai Jesse in the room?
Chassi.
Jesse?
Yeah!
If we can just have our gift. Our gift? Oh. It's being couriered from the staff room. Yep. Please join us on stage.
That was too easy. He literally walked in and won. I love it for you. Yeah. Icho bechulan. Love winning. All right, guys. So we're about to go into our next session. And our last session for the day. I know I'm full of stories, But I promise this is the last session. It's the last story I'm ever sharing with you guys. But I bet I'll see you, all of you, once again somewhere. So what was interesting, I remember I was in this garden, and this was kind of at a big age, so this is low-key embarrassing, but I'll share it nonetheless, because it's very tied to the conversation that we were about to go to in the next session. So I remember me and a very special friend of mine were walking through the garden, and I think it was somewhere in Johannesburg. I don't remember the farm. But as we were walking through the farm, there's like different vegetation, that's up. You have trees, you have some flowers on the ground. And I remember seeing this tree, and I was like, oh, that's so beautiful. Like, I wonder what that is. And he literally looked at me like... What do you mean, dog? He looked at me like, you do know that's a banana tree, right? And I was like, I'd never seen a banana tree in my life. And I know that sounds like really weird, but I think I'd like to share the story of how detached we are from our food systems, from the time that your veggie is in the ground to the time that's in your plate. Sometimes we get very disconnected and forget, or rather don't remember, the process through which we actually get some of these nutrients. So we call this maybe the return of the repressed, but the next conversation that talks about growing together and the whole of society's approach to food security and climate action is very much linked to this. So to go into our next session with our South and South. Can you please welcome them to the stage? Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. Do you listen to me? Yeah? Okay, hi. Hello. So my name is Georgia Nicolau. I came all the way from São Paulo, Brazil. I have some friends here. Thank you for the invitation. It's my second F20, so last year I was in Rio at the F20. Thank you for the whole team to organize such an event and putting people together. And I'm here representing my organization, which is called Procomum. We work with a simple yet challenging thing, which is working with citizen innovation, so putting people at the center of every single solution. And building infrastructure and methodologies for the complex problems we have to address them collectively from the perspective of the people who suffer the problems. And we are a proud member of South-South Network. We have some of us here. We are a network of organizations and people working to advance climate justice, narrative-led, from a grassroots perspective. And today I'm really happy to be hosting this session with amazing people. We're going to be speaking about growing together from an intersectional perspective, looking at food, biodiversity, and climate. So I think it's a great way of finishing after having so many conversations here. And our first guest today has come all the way from New Delhi. So I'm going to call here to the stage Nivedita. Nivedita, please join us. She's regional director at Welthungerhilfe in India and an expert in nutrition-sensitive agriculture. So thank you, Nivedita. I'll leave that to you.
Thank you. I just want to make a connection and the digital advocacy advice.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Georgia, for introducing me. And from Africa, I'm going to take you all the way to Asia now and share some of the experiences that our organization has worked on decarbonizing food systems. Coming on to food systems, like I said, we'll be talking about local food systems for adaptation and climate resilience. I'll tell you a bit more about my organization next. It's a German organization based in Bonn, working on zero hunger, working on food and nutrition security and humanitarian aid. And we are about 62 years old, born out of the Freedom from Hunger movement of the FAO. We work in about 36 countries in Asia, Latin America, and Africa. And I'm based at New Delhi, working as a regional advisor there. First of all, I come on to why do we need a food systems transformation, So we need a food systems transformation because our food systems today are broken. If you see this picture, and as our MC also just now mentioned, there is a complete disconnect between rural and urban, between the rural people and the urban. Did you try to figure out when was the last time when you thought about the food on your plate and the farmer who's growing it? Must be ages. I think a lot of our children, especially in the towns, don't really know where their food is coming from. And this shows the whole disconnect between food, the farmer who's consuming it, who's producing it. And if you see in this picture, the food, what we call the food, is actually, that's a commodity, which is produced somewhere, someone sells it, and what the market wants us to consume. It is not really real food. Our food systems today are not connected to public health, to environmental sustainability, to economic equity, to social resilience, or to social justice. On one side, we have about 830 million people who are malnourished, and about 3 billion people who cannot afford a healthy diet. And on the other side, there are 890 million adults who are living with obesity. So that's the current state of the food systems. Globally, 1/3 of the food produced is wasted. And if food waste were a country, it would be the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases. And food today, like I mentioned, is what the market wants us to consume. And traditional foods, local foods, are fast disappearing. We have about 50,000 edible food varieties, which includes plants, fish, so many other kinds of foods. But today, rice, wheat, and maize dominate. And India once cultivated about 6,000 rice varieties, but today we are consuming only about 50 to 60 rice varieties. And so 6,000 rice varieties is just what we cultivated. Actually, we had about 100,000 rice varieties at some point of time, but these are all very fast disappearing. So what are our food systems today? Our food systems are broken. I mean, the farmers who are, the food systems which are designed today are not really healing the planet, but they are managing to only ravage it. Farmers who are supposed to provide food to the world are actually driven to debt and to desperation. In India, since the last 1 decade, about 115,000 farmers have committed suicide because of desperation, because of the debt they are in, because we are not caring enough for them. The food that is supposed to nourish us and our souls is actually today poisoned. So every time I'm having an apple, I'm actually thinking, how many sprays does this apple have? Every time I'm having a bowl of lentils, I have to think, does it have glyphosate? Does it not have glyphosate? What will it do to my body? So this is the kind of food that we are consuming today. The soil is turning dead because of all the poisons that we are dumping there. The indigenous seeds and land races are fast disappearing. As I just mentioned, in India we had more than 6,000 rice varieties, but consuming only 50 to 60. And about 150 to 200 species are lost every single day. And water bodies are fast depleting. We have polluted them, we have overexploited them, we have, in the name of green revolution, we have pumped out the groundwater. And all of this is attributed to what our current food systems are all about. So food systems also are vulnerable to climate change because, as we all know, that it's the droughts, the floods, the extreme weather events are all negatively impacting food systems. And food systems also contribute to climate change. About 21 to 37% of the total greenhouse gas emissions are contributed by the current food systems. So, what is the food system that we today see? Food systems cannot be seen in isolation. They are actually connected to our food systems are social and cultural connected. They're connected to political and governance systems. They're connected to our health systems. They're connected to our environmental systems. And they're connected to our equity, to our economic systems. But what we are doing is making a mistake by treating food as a commodity, which is just produced, sold, and distributed. But in reality, food is health, food is culture, food is ecology. And the planet is like a human body. You cannot poison one part of the human body and expect the rest of it to function very well. And that's also what we actually want a food system to be. So what is the transformation that we need? We need not Band-Aid. We need actually a paradigm shift. We need to replace separation and exploitation by whole of society, holistic thinking approaches. And we need empathy and connection. And healthy food is not a commodity, but it is a human right. What we need is food that heals the earth, not harms it, and where power doesn't control what farmers grow and what we consume. And we need systems where we nourish farms, and we don't think about pharmacies always. So this is the food systems that we're talking about. How do we translate this into ground action? At Weltunga Hilfe, long before the word food systems became very current, we started working on the whole systems approach. This is an example of an integrated farm at the ground level, a farm where we talk about poultry, about animal rearing, about cropping patterns, about aquaculture, where all these subsystems are actually very closely connected to each other, where waste is recycled. It's a circular farm. Where nothing is wasted, no nutrient is lost from the farm. So this is just an example of how farming can be done on the ground, and how this whole systems approach can be translated to action on the ground. On living landscape. So on the farm, on the one side, we have integrated farming systems, but how else do we convert this into a living landscape? One example of this is reviving forgotten foods, which actually contribute to mitigation and locally led adaptation. So what are forgotten foods? So these are foods that have been cultivated, domesticated, consumed since ages, but which have been neglected, undervalued, and whose roles have been completely marginalized. They are currently called orphan foods, abandoned, disadvantaged, neglected, poor people's foods. But time to rename them as opportunity crops, as future smart foods, as climate smart foods, as wonder crops. You can call them anything. But this is what forgotten foods, this is the kind of opportunity that forgotten foods present to us. One example that I bring to you from Asia are millets. So millets are actually traditional foods which have been consumed globally, which have been consumed not just through centuries, but through the millennia. And these are foods which have been forgotten. They have been neglected. In Asia, during the colonial times, these foods were relegated to being as poor man's foods because they're also coarse cereals. And these were replaced by wheat and rice, which are more refined in nature. And it was considered infra-dig to consume these foods. Since then, these millets have been forgotten, but now, thankfully, there is a kind of realization of what opportunity these foods present to us, in terms of their health, their adaptation capacities, their nutrition benefits, their friendliness to the ecosystem, ecological adaptation. They are C4 crops, and they have very high water use efficiency. They have a very short growing season, and they can be stored for very long durations. They grow in poor soils. They also don't require agrochemicals, which is the best part about these millets. They don't, because they are very pest and disease resistant. In all, they have a very low carbon footprint. I give you here an example from one of our project areas, Punjab, which is considered the food bowl of the country, but Punjab grows wheat and rice. It does monocropping. It does hybrid seeds. It does everything that conventional agriculture has demanded from this form of agriculture. So if you see from 1895, if you compare and to 2017, if you look at the number of exploited blocks, and the red is the number of exploited blocks. And this is all because of the kind of agriculture that we are practicing under the Green Revolution. And in 2037, if you see, the whole area is projected to become red, which means we are pumping out groundwater, depleting the aquifers, and all of this is contributed to the current state of the food systems. Just to give an example, it takes 5,000 to 8,000 liters of water to produce 1 kg of rice. But to produce millet, it takes only 250 liters. So that's a huge reason for us, for a water-deprived country as India, to switch to millets. Millets, in terms of the health benefits, they have huge health benefits. They are a powerhouse of nutrition. They are a very good source of protein, of fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, you name it. They are gluten-free, which is very important. They are very alkaline in nature, which is what we are all trying today to make food. They have a very low glycemic index, which means that they are very good for diabetics. And they are beneficial for our overall health, for our cardiovascular health, for cancer prevention, for all kinds of health issues. In addition to cultivated millets, we also have wild and uncultivated foods, which are generally found in and near the forest areas, in the common lands, in the grazing lands, but which again have not been documented, which are kind of relegated to the background, and the importance and the role of which is not realized so far. So, and these are extremely relevant for adaptation amongst tribals and local communities. So what we as Weltong Welfare are doing is to document these wild and uncultivated foods, to test their nutritional values, and also to get the communities to conserve and to sustainably harvest them from the forest. Because we don't want them to destroy the commons, or to sustainably harvest them. And these wild and uncultivated foods are extremely important because of the coping strategy during times of drought or times of food stress. They are very rich sources of vitamins. They are available during times of water stress, as I mentioned. And actually, they contribute up to 45% of the community's food basket in times of stress. And sometimes these foods are, especially like wild animals, insects, they are the only source of animal protein for people who are unable to afford other sources of protein. And food sovereignty and gender. So millets, traditional food systems is all about food sovereignty and gender, because it's all about preserving local knowledge, reducing food miles, increasing resilience, and promoting women as entrepreneurs and decision makers. Somehow it refuses to move. Okay. So on ground, what have we done? On ground, we have strengthened capacities on agroecology of farmers. We have worked on ecological production. We actually only work on ecological production. We work on trainings, building strengthening capacities, building farmers' organizations through capacity strengthening by helping them put up processing facilities, product development, also market linkages. You also need to address the whole market, So it's not possible to just work on the supply side, but it's important to work on the demand aspect of it as well, and to create a pull factor. To engage with the consumers, we have worked with consumer groups of all kinds, whether it's yoga groups or resident welfare associations. We have worked on recipes of millets because people have basically forgotten how do you cook millets, what are the nutritional values. It's small things which make a lot of difference, but we work with food influencers to promote cooking and how actually do you really do it in everyday life. We have worked with the hospitality industry, with the chefs, with the hotels, restaurants, on recipes, on promotion of millets, putting it back on the menu in the hotels. And we have supported farmer markets, trade fairs, festivals, also engaging widely with the media, because it's important to bring out the benefits of these forgotten foods. And engaging with all kinds of media, whether it's social media or mainstream media, has been extremely relevant and important, working especially on YouTube, a lot of promotion through social media as well, and influencing the younger generation. Also, it has been very important to do advocacy with the government. We have we have engaged a lot with the government, especially for procuring indigenous and organic ecological foods into the government food programs like the midday meal programs, child feeding programs. And we have been extremely successful on getting this. Luckily, the government of India and also the state governments in India recognize the importance of getting millets back onto the menu. And it's increasingly becoming part of the menus of school feeding programs. So we have to work on all kinds of systems within the government. So it's also working with the health systems where you identify the malnourished children and teach their mothers on how to cook these healthy foods. Working with the agriculture department to increase the acreage of millets in the country. Working and trying to influence members of parliaments, working with the legislatures to launch millet missions. So millet missions are becoming a kind of roadmap in the country to move towards more millets, towards increasing production and consumption of millets. And we are working on developing knowledge products, campaigns, recipe books, and also a lot of other communication material. We have been working on formation and strengthening of networks which support forgotten foods and local agroecological foods. So to end this, I would like to share the story of Habibai, who is a transformative tribal leader and a millet champion. She lives near a tiger reserve. And she tells us her story, where she says millets were completely forgotten. The kind of millet that she chose to revive, which was there in her region, was called the kodo millet. And she says, we used to have it, our grandparents used to have it, but during the time of the colonial era, we completely forgotten, on how to consume. These were considered poor man's foods, and nobody is eating them any longer. The government is not providing the seeds. The agricultural universities are not promoting it. So people completely dropped millets from their plates. And when now there is an increasing recognition of the importance of these forgotten foods, She managed to get seeds with our help, and then she tried to convert her farm into an ecological farm where she did mixed farming and reincorporated millets. So it was not easy to do this in the beginning because farmers are not so easily convinced. But when they saw the success and the entire economics of it, because millets are also becoming very highly demanded now, because people are beginning to realize now it's really good for health. And there is an increasing market for it. It's also reducing her own family's health bills. And she tried first at her own farm, then she mobilized farmers around her, and gradually now she's become a transformative leader, where she's actually a resource person with the universities, with the governments, and with networks, with farmers, and everybody is actually inviting her for increasing their cultivation of millets. Yeah, so with this, I end my presentation. And if you have any queries, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Nivedita. What a great and powerful presentation, and I think it's a really good memory for us that climate and biodiversity and food systems are about us people, our lives, our world. So climate is not something that is separate from the way we live, our stories, our memories, our traditions, and our policies. So for the next part, so just as awareness, our next, this session will include a fishbowl. So, start your questions and you're going to have a seat here, okay? So for our next part, we're going to hear from Lebogang Matlakala, which is a program manager from Wild Impact. Please, Lebo. And Glasham Kansi, who's also a project manager at Wild Impact. So please come. And before they start, you can sit here, and we're going to have a quick video about the project they're presenting, and then we're going to hear from them on this wonderful project. Thank you.
The GNF project, its main focus is on production of seedlings and the capacity of making more seedlings. The seedlings consist of cabbages, spinach, beetroot, onions, tomatoes, as well as peppers.
The project is about food security, particularly in education facilities, primary schools, and early childhood development centers, which are our main focus for this project. The project basically aims to improve the nutrition of kids in the food that they eat at the centers, particularly in terms of vegetables that they eat.
The GNF project has started in November 2023, and so far we have managed to propagate about 54,000 seedlings.
So far we have 3 seedling hubs that have been established and fully functional. They're now supporting 109 ECD centers.
And today we are at Islington Home-Based Care, where we're having a monitoring and evaluation workshop that has the farmer advisors who have been with us since the project has started.
The CRC food security program started in 2021 in Gothenburg community. The creches are benefiting, the schools are benefiting, people at large, more special, the vulnerable one. Then are given food for free, veg for free. It makes a very huge difference.
Our children eat healthy food, and some of the orphans we give them to eat at home. This program will make a change.
As a community leader, what I enjoy a lot, because they're employing our young ones to do that job.
We are in the process of expanding this project across South Africa. We're growing opportunities. We're not just planting gardens, we're planting hope, nourishment, and a future rooted in care.
Thank you, everyone. That is a special project of ours. It's been a baby for us for the past 14 months. And it's been a success seeing it, get to this point. But before I start, I'd like you to imagine what if all society came together to incorporate all forms of relevant knowledge to ensure that nature is conserved to serve the current and the future generation. So as you have seen the project here, what I'm going to be taking you through is some of the learnings from this project, which I believe is a collaborative effort, and it's proof to us of what the society should work and how conservation and all the other civil society organizations can come together and try and support food security. So Wild Impact is an NGO that is registered in South Africa and Tanzania. We are operating in 9 countries, but we are in partnership with a luxury ecotourism company that is called And Beyond. And Beyond works in 14 seascapes and landscapes. And because of that, we as Wild Impact have the privilege of working with 158 communities that are surrounding these conservation areas. So our work is guided by a complex theory of change that I'm sure you can tell I will not go into the details of what that framework is, but it's an outcome-based framework that basically is guided by our privilege of being able to work with these communities for 30 years and more. So without going into the details, our overall goal is to ensure that the communities we work with are resilient, the landscapes that they work in are biodiverse. We ensure that the communities are also getting core community services that they need, to ensure that the youth in those communities, we are unlocking their talent and potential, and also supporting the sustainable job creation and also small business development in those communities. So that's a summary of what we are seeking to do as Wild Impact. So why do we do what we do? As you might know already, conservation is at the heart of what we do as an organization. As you all may know, that biodiversity is under threat on a global level, but this is equally true for the Greater Kruger landscape, where most of the communities living in this area are still impoverished, and most of them are rural areas. And these rural areas are characterized by high unemployment levels, limited access to healthcare and education services, or also experience poor nutrition, and also are facing one of the biggest climate change risk. So as an organization, we recognize that South Africa, and I said this as a South African proudly, but South Africa has failed when it comes to early childhood development centers. And I think we are now recognizing that this was a mistake, because this phase of early childhood development is very critical for kids' cognitive and social development. So ensuring that we support these early childhood development or children at this age is quite important for us. But I think we're slowly catching up, looking at what the president has addressed recently this year. So going into the actual project, I won't give you a lot of details because I think the video has painted a good idea of what the project is about. But the Velverdien Food Security Project was a 1-year pilot project, and it was a collective effort from the Global Nature Fund, the Velo Foundation, Youth Employment Services, Wild Impact. So all these organizations came together and also the BMZ, to mention the BMZ, it's one of our partners for this project. But we came together to pilot this food security and water security intervention in the Greater Kruger landscape and see how can we support early childhood development centers when it comes to food security. So we established 3 seedling propagation hubs. As you have seen in the video, we've also supported 10 early childhood development centers as part of our pilot phase, and we also recruited 33 youths across these communities to kind of support the operation of this project. But more importantly, we've also ensured that these facilities are capacitated with water storage infrastructure, which is very crucial. As you may all know, that Greater Kruger is one of the hottest parts of the country. So what did we really achieve in this 1 year of a project? I'm standing here proud to say that in this project we were able to propagate at least 20,000 seedlings per quarter to go into all the gardens, not just the 10 sites that I've mentioned, but even more. I think we're currently working with 108 facilities, education facilities, and these seedlings were able to be distributed across even more. We also were able to harvest over 4,000 kilograms of vegetables from these gardens. And this is a real pilot project. There was no expertise on the ground or any of the youth that we've recruited who knew what we were doing. But moreover, we've also been able to the ECD centers were able to sell some of the surplus vegetables that have come from the garden. So they've raised they've sold vegetables worth 13,000 rands, which for them for us it's a win because it helps them to be sustainable and make sure that they're running and getting some income from some of the surplus vegetables. So we have learned. But we didn't learn alone. We learned with the community. We were walking the journey with them. We were learning what are the vegetables that we can and can't grow. What are some of the limitations that we're facing in the face of climate change. And we've also gained significant wisdom from the local farmers that we work with. Unfortunately, we had to crop the video to be a shorter, but we started the journey with local farmers who have been farming in this area for many years. So we learned from them, and we also learned from some of the challenges that climate change was presenting to us. And water scarcity was one of our big challenges for us. We've learned that we need water to actually sustain these vegetable gardens. We've also learned the importance of shade houses. As I've mentioned, Greater Kruger is very hot. The landscape is one of the hottest parts of the country. We've also managed, which for me, when I look back, it's actually one of the biggest success and what speaks to the sustainability of this project. It's the transfer of knowledge from these farmers that are experts in this area into the youth that were put in this project, because a lot of them walked away going home and starting their own farms, and we have really success stories coming out of this. So what is next for us is expanding this project to this model, which I think is a success for us. We're expanding into our South Africa footprint at the moment, which is the Ismangaliso Wetland Park, so the community surrounding that area. We are planning to get 4 more seedling propagation hubs, support 40 core early childhood development centers, and also additional seedlings that can be distributed to more ECDs and other schools across this area. And also training even more youths to ensure that they are capacitated with the skills of knowing how to start these community gardens or grow vegetables. So we're hoping that with this project we'll be able to impact almost 40,000 scholars across this landscape, or the schools that are surrounding these landscapes that I've just mentioned. And we're hoping that the expansion doesn't just stop in South Africa, but it can expand beyond South Africa and all of our landscape that I've shared earlier on. But with me, I have Glacia Mkanzi, who is actually a hero in the community's eyes in terms of this project. She has been instrumental in the success of this project, and she is a passionate ambassador for food security, and she's driving food security activities in the Greater Kruger landscape, and she'll share some of the impacts that she's witnessed from this project. Glacia, over to you.
Thank you, Lebu, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am very much proud to be part of the Verferdin Food Security Project. So my journey with the project has been challenging because of lack of water and the extreme weather conditions that we get to experience in our rural communities. But it has been the most fulfilling part of my life since I've joined the project. I say this because of the impact the project has had in our rural communities of Greater Kruger in Mpumalanga. We have experienced a lot of challenges with regard to our early childhood development centers due to lack of funding by the government. But to my surprise, even the early childhood development centers that we work with haven't received even a R1 this year from the government. So our early childhood development centers are facing a lot of challenges. So I am super proud of the Verferdin Food Security Project for ensuring that there's food in the gardens and learners get to eat. And it is also more challenging because the parents of the learners are unable to pay school fees, which is a mere R100 because of unemployment in our rural communities. I believe that establishing food gardens, it is one of the best ways to supplement school meals. and the additional nutrition that kids receive from the fresh vegetables that has been harvested plays a very crucial part in their lives. And it also improves their ability to concentrate and perform better in their studies. Proper nutrition between the age of 0 to 5 years lays a strong foundation of long-term development and good health. Adequate nutrition is a pillar in early childhood development. It has a huge impact in a child's growth, brain development, as well as prevention of diseases. I have learned that food security in early childhood development centers, it is one of the most efficient ways to development, and not just development, but real development of our country. In closing, farming is a way of building resilience, create impact, as well as securing independent finance. We need serious interventions in our country when it comes to early childhood development centers with water security as well as food security. And it is within us to take care of our future generations. Over to you, Lebu.
Thank you, Tlacia. You can tell she's an ambassador for food security and early childhood development centers. So I'd like to take this moment to recognize the partners who have been instrumental in ensuring the success of this project, but more importantly, the Velo Foundation in the room. Thank you so much for the support. This was a great collaborative effort between all the partners. As I end off, I'd like to just end off on a note to say that together we can empower the communities and drive change. And I believe all this collaborative effort, and we've had all this discussion happening throughout the day. I think for us, this is the only way we can actually achieve transformation. Thank you.
Wow. I love my job. Can you see the bright in their eyes? Yeah, that's what we need, right? So right now, we're going to have like a fishbowl. So if you don't know what a fishbowl is, it's simple. We're going to have an empty chair for you. So please come along. But we're going to be joined for amazing people. We'll continue in South Africa. I'm going to call my friend Namganso Kanoma Klubikosa. She is a Global Atlantic Fellow. She leads the Food Security Network in the Global Atlantic Fellow. And we'll be joined by Maria Paula. Come, please sit. You can sit here. She'll be joined by Maria Paula from Mutante. She's the co-founder of Mutante, which is a platform for media in Colombia, working with environmental justice, gender justice. And also Andrew Brain, who's an urbanist and governance strategist from South Africa as well, and working in the development sector for more than 40 years. Welcome, Andrew. Thank you for joining us. And this is you. Whoever you is, you can come and join us. And it doesn't have to be now. It can be all along the conversation, okay? Yeah. So, thank you for being here. I want to invite you to give your remarks on, so we're speaking about growing together and this concept of whole of society, right? And what does it mean to connect all these dots and really work together in different levels and in different sectors? So how can we make it more visible that we need each other? We need each other's expertises. We need to also recognize where is power, which kind of power, how can we transform power to power within, to power together. So I'll start with Andrew, because I know you have some good thoughts on whole of society, and you've been also looking into what does it mean to actually work together. So maybe can you bring us some insights, Andrew, please?
Georgia, thank you very much. We just heard two, as you said, brilliant inputs. And I'd like to refer to them in how I try and explain how to put together effective whole-of-society partnerships. Because often we have dialogues that don't always lead to action and implementation. And then it leads to a lot of frustration. After 6 or 12 months, we've been talking. How do we convert it into sustained, what I'd call collaborative impact? And what I noticed about both the presentations, and maybe it's a little bit unfair, but I'm going to try and make a point, is that often we spend a lot of time on the why. Why do we need change? Why do we need to change the food system in India and other parts of the world? Why do we need to change the nutrition system for children at ECDs in South Africa? And both sets of speakers set up a very compelling case with data. Why is the system broken? Why does it need to be changed? No problem with that. And then we kind of jump to what needs to be done, what can be done, whether it's switching to millet or planting thousands of seedlings, a whole lot of actions. Also, nothing wrong with that. But I often think that there's two things missing, which I want to hear more of. And that is, who needs to work together to make things happen? And secondly, how do we work together in practice? Because unfortunately, we are not very good at working together in what I call the top-down authorizing environment of government and policymakers. Government departments don't often work together. When you want to change your food system, you've got to mobilize 6 to 8 different departments because there's often no Minister of Food Security. So you've got to have a cross-cutting, transversal approach, and government departments suck at working together, unfortunately. But also, people on the ground often are quite protective of their projects and their territories and their donors and their funders, and also struggle to work together. And so what I've seen, and I've looked at and worked on over 100 different partnering projects over the last 25 years, I see what I call a kind of collaboration spectrum, which kind of goes from distrust and negative impact through to distant trust and minimal impact, through to partial trust and partial impact or improved impact, right through to mutual trust and collective impact. And I would say that 90% of our efforts, unfortunately, fall in the first 3 categories. And only 10% of our systems change programs and activities fall in what I'd call collective impact. So by negative impact, what I've experienced is, competing and overlapping mandates. This is my territory, not yours. You back off. Or don't bring me your unfunded mandate. I'm going to reject it. It goes round and round and round. Rivalry and sabotage, whether it's in government or amongst NGOs or amongst business-funded projects or even donors. Not immune to that sort of behavior. Non-collaborative attitudes and behaviors, poor communication and shared goals. That's on the extreme, but I've seen it happen many times. And even when you can have an excellent project on the ground, but if it's isolated from all the other projects that are meant to change the system, it can even win global awards, but it actually has very little impact. You may be feeding 500 families or even 5,000, but you need to change it for 500,000. And so how do we work together in practice? And adding those 2 little questions, who needs to work together to make this thing happen that we are trying to do here, and how do we work together in practice? So I'm just going to offer 5 sort of hows, and this can be done by organizations themselves. It can be done by what I call collaborative intermediaries that are helping build these partnerships and coalitions. So the first thing is, how do we help people and institutions to see the system beyond their mandates? Because unfortunately, we tend to all be locked into organizations and institutions, be they in the authorizing environment, be they in the mobilizing environment. We start with the organizational mandate. This is our mission. This is our goal. This is our budget. These are our KPIs. We don't look left and we don't look right. See who else is working in the system. Who else could we collaborate with? And we have to help people see the system beyond their mandates to appreciate the need to work together. That you can't go no matter how brilliant your projects are and how well you're spending your money, don't do it alone. Look left, look right, look up, look down. Okay? Secondly, to change the system, you need to help your people to understand that everyone in your organization has 2 jobs. And again, this could be a government department, it could be an NGO. Your first job is to manage what you control. That's your mandate. Nothing wrong with that. But secondly, and at the same time, you've got to influence other parts of the system that you do not control. So the third point is you cannot command or instruct influence in a system. You've got to be in a relationship to influence. You've got to be in lots of different relationships, and they've got to be healthy relationships. If our relationships are competitive or one-sided or half-hearted or toxic, we will not be good influencers. And if we are not good influencers in a system, it's very hard to counter and change the prevailing narrative, which is very strongly in support of the status quo. In other words, no change. Then fourthly, partnering is a two-way street. We need to be as open to being influenced as much as we would like to influence others. So if we are not prepared to change, how do we expect others to change? And we've got to show that. And then part of that is we need to be able to work affirmatively with difference. And that means working with people that we don't agree with, and perhaps we don't even like. It's no use just working with your own people. You've got to work outside and deal with the other bubbles that people are working in. And then finally, partnering and partnerships don't come easy, as Ringo Starr sang back in 1971. Capabilities of collaborative and adaptive leadership need to be developed and nurtured in every organization and institution. Thank you.
Thank you. Really valuable contributions, and I think it resonates a lot with, at Procommun, we like to work with the concept and the practice of the commons. And to think about the commons, the way we describe it is like you have, every time you have a community and you have a set of resources that need to be managed, you need to have agreements, right? And these agreements need to be fast changing. So I think also just to add on what Andrew brilliantly brought us, once you set the rules and governance structures, they need to be also adaptable because things change. We move along, the project moves along, or the goals move along. And they need to be fast changing, so we need to be communicating. And I think communication and governance are really together and we need to be communicating. And I love that you said, I like to say that to create a commons together, so to create shared goals, we don't need to love each other or even like each other, right? But we have to know where we're going together. And I think we all agree, because we are sitting in this room and the name is Climate Solutions Forum. If there are solutions we're seeking, there are many problems we have. And I think we now know the problems are all of us, belongs to all of us, even though some people suffer more than others. So thank you for that. I think the other day I was moderating another conversation on the COP30, and there was this diplomat from Canada, Edgar. He told us that climate change is a governance problem. I don't know if I fully agree, but I think that is something interesting on how we speak a lot about everything else rather than also speak about the house, the governance, the politics, the diplomacy, negotiation skills, facilitation skills. And also, I'll bring myself my loving agenda, care. What does it mean to do it with care? To create spaces for people to come with their limits, and we can work around with them. So I'll ask Maria, please, Maria, how do you see all of these growing together from also a narrative perspective and telling stories because I know that Mutante also works with different agendas, right? And in the end, it's working with social justice, social transformation. So how do you see those growing together as a whole of society, connecting these dots?
I would like to start by asking you all a question. And it's a question that Nivedita asked earlier, and it was, when was the last time you sat before your plate of food and actually asked yourself about it? Maybe if you had lunch here, it was today, just because something sparked. So everything said vegan something. So there was vegan rice, vegan bake. So we actually ask about our food, and we ask ourselves about our food, and we reflect when there's something that catches our attention. Or if someone comes and just brings to mind that there's something different. And I do think that asking about food, which is the most global of all the topics, is the way to spark conversations and create narratives that can perpetuate difference and that can perpetuate hunger, or build narratives that can transform that. So my question was about how we actually reflect on food, and how do we build an ecosystem through conversation, through public conversations, that makes it possible for us to change the way in which we tell stories about food, to actually come with this kind of stories that our partners were mentioning earlier, and bring them to life in our own lives. So, to answer your question, Georgia, and to also pick up on what Andrew was saying, when we ask ourselves who needs to work together, it's not only the decision makers that come to mind, because aren't we all decision makers? We all are decision makers, even more when it comes to food. We choose the food. We usually, privileged people, such as many of us, we have the possibility of choosing our food. And when we choose our food, we are making decisions that can impact. And then that is connected to narratives, and that is connected to a story that we can actually have the power to shift if we bring together different perspectives and we do the conversations. So when we at Mutante, which is an independent media platform, do participatory journalism, we want to bring different perspectives of people to actually have these kinds of conversations, to research collaboratively, to build collective knowledge around these topics. And what we have answered, or the questions that we have been posing ourselves by trying to answer others, are how can we build together a different way of thinking about food and bringing diversity. So I think the whole of society approach actually needs to be done with diversity, with understanding that we all are decision makers, and that the food that we are choosing every day should come with a reflection, besides just having the food, but just trying to sit down and ask ourselves, where does it come from, so that we can build this conversation from the plate. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but it's like we are all part of a very vast system, and if we have the opportunity to reflect on it and to build different narratives by reflecting on what we are eating, then that can have a huge impact, and we can actually transcend the scale of these very huge projects by making them more impactful through the daily conversations that we can have in the dinner table. So the dinner table is usually a place that you portray as a place where conversations happen. So what if we transform that space of conversation into something that can embrace food as a topic of conversation, and as a topic of conversation that is also the entryway to other bigger conversations about climate, about biodiversity, about segregation, about the different ways in which we can actually use power to make different decisions. So I would like to finish by saying that conversation is the way in which I think the whole of society approach through narratives can actually be appointed to this topic, and can actually harness this topic to shift the narratives and to have a bigger conversation that starts from our own dinner tables.
Thank you, Maria. I think I love conversations, and I think conversations are a great way to define how our relations could be, even with our funders, with people we don't like, because on conversations you find out things about the people you want to work with, and you find common ground. There's only one way of finding common ground, it's holding conversations, and meaningful conversations, even if they are quick. and unarmed, hopefully. May I remind you that your spot is still free? So, I mean, I'm sure you have all these questions. I know you're tired as well, but, you know, these great people here, conversation, and also it's really comfortable. I mean, I think it's a bit more comfortable than yours, so please join us. Namganso, I know that you've been working in the intersectionality of food and education and bringing also schools into the conversation of food, and also widely you're articulating a number of networks on food security with people from other places. So I was wondering, how do you feel about this conversation of whole of society? And when you're working by joining these networks, do you feel that you need bigger effort to break the silos? Is this part of your job, to break the silos, or is it something that just goes? Can you let us know a bit about your work, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia. And just to also thank the speakers before us, seeing those beautiful smiles of little ones watering their gardens reminded me of our little ones back home. So I think we're also just going to tap into some of the questions Prof raised as a way forward. So what we had to strategically do was to consider what diversified collaborative efforts could look like in the context of our community. And this came as a result of one of the greatest things, and this is not a paid advertisement at all. One of the greatest things that enabled me to pivot my life completely was, and I'm sure for you, Georgia, and so many of us here who are part of the Atlantic Global Fellowship Program, was being part of specifically the Atlantic Fellowship Program for Health Equity in South Africa, based in Tegano, where languaging matters. For instance, I thought that the work that I would end up doing coming into the fellowship, to answer your question, would be to answer a simple question: how do we make schools, because I've been working within the schooling system, how do we make schools health-conscious learning spaces? And I thought it was to be, ensure that we promote food security. But Tegano said no, because food security means access to food, right? It doesn't question where the food comes from. It doesn't question how the food system is monopolized. And that in South Africa, in the South African context, the majority of the people that are actually consumers within that system do not partake as producers who have been awarded a space where they can also benefit. And Tegano said to me, what we should be agitating for is food sovereignty, because food sovereignty speaks about who controls that system, right? Food sovereignty speaks about whose land is it. And in South African context, contrary to what some are trying to agitate for, we don't have anybody stealing anybody's land by force. If anything, South Africa is yet to address the land dispossession that has been happening and continuing to this day in various forms. So food sovereignty enables us to question who owns the seeds that we are planting. Only 4 companies globally, imagine how many we are. Only 4 companies control the seed economy. What is that? Right? Who controls the food, the ecosystem, like from the packaging to distribution? Who controls that? So we speak about food sovereignty, and what we did, to answer your question, Prof, it was to say, okay, we have access to the public schooling system, right? Because we've been working for over 15 years as a partner to our local government, focusing on governance and management systems. We have to get our schools effectively managed and run so that quality teaching and learning can happen. But then, as the South African Human Rights Commission released in 2023, in my home province, the province that we are proud to call ourselves home of legends, we produced Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, Winnie Madikizela Mandela. We produced so many people that played a critical part in getting our country to where it is today. But then the Human Rights Commission of South Africa confirms what we see on the ground in our communities, in our villages, that 1 in every 4 kids in the Eastern Cape province is malnutritioned. The food insecurity crisis in my home province, it is so bad that over 50% of our children are stunted. Now, if a child is stunted, you know what that means, right? So what we did briefly was, in a partnership between the Atlantic Institute, Degano, on behalf of the Atlantic Institute for Health Equity in South Africa, we piloted a food sovereignty program, and we were so brave, Prof. I call it brave because we decided we're not doing it alone. So because if the challenges are so intersectional, we don't have land, right? Because this is a community that was a settlement in the early 1960s, Sada, where my umbilical cord is buried. Africans would know one thing the umbilical cord in Kaba will do is to pull you back and do the work. So there is no space. The yards are inadequate. What do? We've got schools. And we had to remember that the Public Schooling Act in South Africa tells us that schools are spaces not just for curriculum, centered learning, but schools are meant to ensure that communities are capacitated in every possible way so that we produce a generation of kids who are very engaged in how to take our country forward. So together with the Department of Education, the Department of Land and Agrarian Reform, the Department of Social Development, the Department of Health, the South African Police Services, we came together and we piloted a food sovereignty program in 2023. Today, 3 schools have been adopted. Not less than 20,000 GMO-free seedlings are produced. What is special about the type of food, or rather the programming we're doing, is the first cohort was capacitated to, we had a program we called Train the Trainer. So now we don't do any formal training because the first cohort that was capacitated now runs the programming. Because we are very against the notion that help comes from the outside in communities. Because you develop, that's why at times when projects, when rather funders or organizations leave such communities, they collapse. It's important for communities to have autonomy because they know what is wrong in their communities. I listened today, speaker trying to bring us back to the level of the grassroots thinking. Communities know what's wrong. They are aware of what they need. And most of those communities, the reason why they are unable to do the work that they will also love to do, it's resources, which is a privilege. In our context, it is attached to where we come from as a country. So it was very important for us to ensure that these 3 schools, these 34 now parents are capacitated. And the program that we have, we've got about 6 modules that touches on community engagement, that touch on South African education system, on active citizenship, because we had to ensure we respect the parents enough, whether or not they finished high school training, but we respect them enough that we provide them with a space of unlearning, learning, and making sure that they are skilled enough to run the program themselves. Today, 1,400 kids consume GMO-free vegetables that are produced in their schools. Today, over 40 home gardens have been produced. Today, children as young as 10-year-olds, they will tell you that we have to plant kale in this season. They will tell you why, for us, we don't use fertilizers. They will tell you how they smile to grandfathers who own goats, because goat manure and chicken manure are the 2 manures that you can put in the soil and plant in the soil immediately. They will tell you how to take care of a seedling. They will tell you what, they've got seed banks. In primary school, they've got seed banks. And that has been possible because what we did as a collective, we respected the community enough to know it doesn't mean because they do not have the resources at that present moment, they don't know anything. All they needed was opportunity. All they needed was support. And today, we are sitting with applications from over 15 schools from the district wanting to form part of this network. But because we've got limited resources, we can't, at this present moment, assist with the infrastructure support. But what they will get is GMO-free seedlings. And what we were very intentional, lastly, Georgia, on the type of food that is produced in these schools. Kale cauliflower, broccoli, 3 types of onions. I didn't even know there were 3 types of onions. 2 types of spinach. I didn't even know there were 2 types of spinach. 3 types of cabbages. And we were very intentional about that because food has been commodified. And if you cannot afford a particular type of vegetable, you're automatically grouped to a particular social class. So we have children walking out of mud houses that are probably leaking if it's raining, but knowing that when they come back, there's a plate of cauliflower, there's a plate with cauliflower, with broccoli, with this and that, because they too deserve that plate of food. So in deconstructing, right, that myth that particular food belongs to particular people from a particular, we are raising now a generation of kids who know that it's not enough to have food on the table, but who produced this food. We can develop our own ecosystems. We don't need the funny part now. I promise you it's the last time. When we had our review in March, because now schools run this on their own, I laughed at 2 of the schools saying they got a call from their previous vegetable supplier asking them, how have you deserted us? You don't buy vegetables from us anymore. The schools were like, oh no, peace. We produce our own vegetables. And what that does, it's beyond the schools saving money and not buying. But schools now have autonomy to determine how they are feeding, as long as they adhere to the National Nutrition Program rule. But they have autonomy now to determine how the spending goes. And most importantly, in one of the most poorest parts of the Eastern Cape, you have kids having a plate of vegetables every single day. It's growing in their home gardens, it's growing at school. And all it needed was just activation. So communities are able to collaborate strategically. And maybe one of the conversations we need to have, Georgia, is when we have conversations of this magnitude, we need to ensure community members are presented. We need to make sure community members themselves are here. If you are going to ask, but why didn't you bring your own? Finances, right? But we've got communities in Langa, we're here in Cape Town. We've got communities in Khayelitsha. We've got communities all across in Philippi. If we are to genuinely do this work, there can't be some of us left outside, because this is a crisis for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if you're not going to sit, I'm gonna ask you to make questions so we can have Q&A. We still have 15 minutes, so I know some of you were wanting to have more participation. So I just want to pick up 2 things that Nangamso brought. I think autonomy and sovereignty, really nice. And also the fact that sometimes the high-level governance, like in government structures, maybe they don't collaborate, the Ministry of Education and Agriculture. But when you go to the territory, it's impossible for you to not be intersectional, because the same person that is going to school has also problems with food insecurity and is also suffering climate change problems. So, you know, in the territory, like the policies are made together. So maybe this also can feed into the top levels of governments, right? And then we can learn together, because sometimes it's harder when you're sitting in your office and you're not seeing the people and the things, how they work. So I think this is a great also lesson from your perspective of how you looked, as Andrew said, to the right, to the left, to the front and to down, and kind of integrated that and gave, you know, space for people to bring their knowledge in, and knowledge in a wide system of what does it mean, knowledge, right? So I would like to know if anybody has questions, to them or also to our former colleagues, because we still have time. And of course, if you don't have, I have a lot of questions. But I think it would be great to hear some of you, because I know a lot of you has a lot of experiences, but also are from different fields or countries that could bring, and it doesn't have to be a question, can also be an example or something. Yes, do you want to speak from there, or do you want to come here and sit with us? No, come.
It's quite hard to see.
Also because your dress is beautiful, so. Okay. Yeah. We need that orange. Woo! Thank you.
So much. Awesome. So thank you so much. That was so insightful, so edifying. The question is actually for you, Prof. So I believe a lot in the power of partnerships and collaboration. It's a huge chunk of what I do at my organization. I work for a nonprofit in the water and sanitation space. And I sometimes feel like we're leaving a lot of value on the table when it comes to partnerships. You mentioned that partnership doesn't come easy and that there's a need to develop capacities in terms of maintaining partnerships, facilitating partnerships. I'm curious to find out exactly what capacity you see lacking for the most part, if you're noticing any trends that might be leading to that value being left on the table.
So thank you for the question. Also have quite a lot of experience trying to build partnerships in the water and sanitation space, so we must talk about that. And I think for me, a whole of society approach views all stakeholders in a particular system as potential initiators and implementers, not just as passive bystanders in their own development. In other words, we develop with people rather than to them or at them. Maria talked about all our decision makers, and I think it would fall into that same approach. So for me, if you start with the public sector, government, which is the shaper of public policy, the mobilizer of public resources and the allocation of resources, either correctly or incorrectly, in a particular system, I would say government is not just a deliverer of services, but also potentially the co-creator with communities and non-state stakeholders of an enabling environment to support citizen voice and agency. And often states do not have that capacity or capability. They are inwards looking and upwards managing to the minister, to the DG, to the mayor, to the municipal manager. And they don't look downwards and outwards, if I can call it that. So they lack that capacity to create that enabling environment. As we know, certainly in this country, I don't know about Colombia or other countries, obsessed with regulatory compliance. And half of government is reporting on what the other half is doing, and those reports are adding no value. So in the public sector, there's a long way to go to change the capabilities. But I also find working with NGOs, social movements, active citizenry, people on the grounds, social impact projects from business and donors and things like that, often there's a curious naivete on the ground about what this authorizing system looks like and how it works in practice. And I think we need to empower people working in what I call the bottom-up mobilizing environment to better understand the top-down authorizing environment, and not just to understand it and how it works in practice, but how to influence it and how to work with it. So I think we need to build capacity in both environments, not just one. Thank you.
Thank you. What's your name, please?
Which one is it now? Oh, my name is Lele. I work for Viva Con Agua, South Africa. We implement projects in water and sanitation. We also work in social enterprise development with the Vilo Foundation, so that's been amazing. So this conversation is really just so important, so brilliant. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Woo. Okay. Who else? Hi. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Why not?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the insights on the panel. My name's Kyle Hutchinson. I'm not working for anyone at the moment, but I do have a question for you, Prof. You mentioned a collaboration spectrum going from negative impact and distrust to mutual trust and collective impact. And you shared 5 ways to get people and organizations to work together. I'm curious how you see healing, particularly healing from trauma, fitting into that. I think in many systems, unaddressed trauma, individual, collective, historical, can often show up as resistance, disconnection, and mistrust. Do you see a role for healing-centered approaches in systems change work and collective impact? And if so, where might they fit in that framework?
Ooh, great question. Congratulations.
Yeah. So it's 100% necessary to look back on the disjunctures and wounds of the past and the exclusions and the erasures of the past in order to go forward together. I mean, often I sit in future planning discussions and people don't want to go back. They say, no, we must look forward. And that is a narrative that obliterates the past and where we've come from, not just in this country, but in so many countries and cities around the world where people have been excluded, traumatized, brutalized, killed. And so, we know that intergenerational trauma is transmitted. Culturally, it's transmitted through epigenetics, and there's so many ways in which people are struggling to work together now because of the past. So we say, we want partnerships, we want collaboration. Well, you've got to go back and deal with a lot of the messy stuff of the past in order to move forward together. So 100%, you've got to start off a lot of the work by looking at where people come from, literally and spiritually and emotionally.
Yeah. You want to add something?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. You want to come? Welcome. Hi.
Gosh, it's intimidating, this long walk to the stage. Hello.
And the bright lights.
And so bright. Hi, everyone. My name is Mira Duchka. I'm the Executive Director of Kuhama. It was such a fascinating conversation. And I don't have a question. It's more like I would like to hear your reflections. I hope that's okay. So the thing that really stuck with me is really about the power of communications and the power of telling a good story, right? Like, in the society that we live in, consumers hold so much power, right? But in order to make informed decisions, they need to be aware. And we started a conversation about food, but the same can apply for the clothing that we wear or the kind of gas we put into our car or the kind of insurance companies that we have, right? So there's so much power in the stories that sit behind how companies and organizations behave. I mean, obviously that speaks to your contribution, but it also speaks to this idea of building partnerships because we can diversify the audiences. But it also speaks to, it also struck me with regard to telling success stories of how communities can create their own ecosystems. So I just wanted to reflect on that and will be very keen to hear what you think. Thank you.
Thank you. What's your name?
Mira. My name is Mira.
Thank you. So maybe we can start with Namganso, so that we can go. So you can comment on hers and whatever other reflections you have as well from the other comments.
So what people need is alternatives. It's like what you're saying. So it's very important to offer alternatives. And for us, our strategic and very deliberate partnership formation was to ensure that we offer an alternative, right? And we see that alternative inspiring at least now 3 districts in our province. And we know that, and beyond that, for instance, the Atlantic Fellowship Global Community now has what we call the Food Sovereignty Network, right? Where all our 7 programs are represented. and we host this food festival, engaging each other on indigenous knowledge food, indigenous knowledge systems, because we know what that means for us, right? As you're saying, Prof, it's another mechanism of healing, because majority of our countries are still trying to recover from the traumas, right, of what colonial structures did to us. So we have to be intentional about languaging. Languaging is very important, hence our push for food sovereignty, because we must be able to control, because he who feeds you controls you. So if we keep on, the other part I wanted to mention, sorry, Georgia, was we must hold the private sector accountable. As much as government must be held accountable for the policies and governance, but private sector, in our context in South Africa as well, must be held accountable. We know that, for instance, 80% of the food that we consume in South Africa is produced by 32,000 farmers, of which more than 80% of them are over 62 years of age, white males. That is problematic. That is not disrupting a system that was created to exclude the majority. And those are necessary and yet uncomfortable in certain spaces conversations we must be able to have. Because we will not have food sovereignty if we don't address what happened in the past, because it is still continuing in South Africa. So private sector must be held accountable through policy advocacy to say, you cannot be, a simple thing in the Eastern Cape, we didn't have spinach for 2 months, except for Woolworths and ShopRite. We didn't have spinach. But you've got local food producers who have and are producing spinach in tons. How is it that we don't have a system that forces the private sector to include the local food producers? That's what the problem is. So private sector is enabled and not being held accountable to come to the table and share. I'll stop there.
Nangamsa just said it. We have to offer alternatives, but the alternatives are there. So we have to find a way to make them visible. And I do think that goes through be really willing to listen. And I've been thinking about, through the other questions that were addressed to the Prof, about how deep listening, which is something that we have been discussing in the past few days. Deep listening is something that we are losing, because we are losing our capacity to actually sitting and being able to focus on one issue, on one topic, and to go beyond the abundance of information, the abundance of noise, and actually sit down and listen to what we need. And I do think listening is a big part of building partnerships, of actually being able to identify what we need and how can we address what we need. And I do think storytelling and the ability to actually have conversations, deep conversations, to look beyond our differences and to try and recognize each other for what makes us similar and not what makes us different. And we can find similarities and we can find common points, as Procomum does, and the commons, and how we can address the common points to actually be able to speak side by side, to speak front to front, and not try to raise our voices louder than everyone else's, so that we can actually know what the other needs, but we can actually express also what we need to be able to see what we can achieve all together, but also in that equal point of view, in that communal space in which a real conversation can happen. You can identify that alternatives are there, that people do have the knowledge, but maybe we're just losing it in the process of fighting for who has the most reach or who has the most visibility. So if we actually try and look each other in the eyes, and not from a platform, but through a fishbowl, through inviting people here to the stage we can build something that is powerful and that transcends those hierarchies. And yes, build something collective and actually understand and build collectiveness.
Thank you.
Maybe I could just, firstly, I really agree with the need to counter and change the existing or prevailing narrative with new stories. There's got to be new content and seeds of the future planted now. And the importance of deep listening. I mean, you cannot collaborate if you are listening to counter an argument as opposed to listening to understand a different point of view. I would just come in with another angle on communication, seeing you absolutely correctly emphasize the need to communicate. And we have a sort of shorthand, the 3 C's of partnering, which was connect, communicate, and collaborate. And we find that works really, really well. The second one being, if you can't communicate, you can't then go on and collaborate. But I'd also just add, if you're trying to break down, well, what is an effective partnership or partnering approach? And it's the presence of a shared vision. You've been able to translate that shared vision into a common agenda. And you've translated that common agenda into joint action. For me, that's the sort of characteristics of a good partnership. But amongst that, do we practice joint communications? And I've found in 9 out of 10 partnerships, the last thing that we all want to relinquish is control over communications. We love promoting our own organizations to the exclusion of others. So we don't promote the partnership, we promote our institution. And corporate communications, their mandate is not to go out and promote the ecosystem change or the collaboration. It's to promote the logo of your organization. And we've got to change that attitude.
Thank you. Thank you. So we've come to an end. I want to thank everybody from my panel and also you that stayed until the end, for the brave ones who sat here on the chair. And I think I'm leaving here with a checklist that I'm going to do every day in the morning. It's like, are my projects really centered in reducing inequality instead of creating it more? Am I actually addressing a problem and not creating a more one? And who am I in this coalition or in this ecosystem, Who else is working on that? What are they doing? How are they doing? Sometimes it seems like it's a loss of time, but it's much more efficient as you go along because you learn from each other and you make friends on the way. There's a lot of joy involved as well in creating things as a network. You meet people, so this is how I met these beautiful people as well, participating in networks, doing joint collaborations. And that doesn't mean we don't have problems, that doesn't mean we don't have traumas, violence, but that means we stand, we can disagree, but we go on together. And I think communication goes along with really mediation, take a step back, and kind of say, is this a big problem or a small one? Can we go further with that? Because we have a shared vision, because we have things to address together, and because we are urgent. So hopefully you come out with some spark to go into action wherever you are. It doesn't matter. We always have partnerships to do. There's a lot of things to create. Use our creativity, which is a gift that was given to us as humans, also to create things together. So thanks a lot. Thanks, F20, and see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick picture.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. A special thank you to everyone that has joined us over the past couple of 2 days. We've really enjoyed ourselves. Thank you for your insights, all that we've learned, and the connections that we've made, and the trust that we've built, and the Ubuntu, the relations that we've shared. I'm truly, truly very grateful to have been a part of these discussions.
Yeah, thank you also from our side as the MCs. It's always a daunting task to have to manage and hold a space like this. And of course, there's a lot that actually goes into it aside from just what happens on stage. So I think there is going to be a proper vote of thanks. But from the MC side, we also just want to thank all of those. First of all, you as the participants and those who attended and who gave your attention. I think attention in our day and age is a very high-end commodity. Everyone's competing for attention. Everyone wants it. Everyone wants to monetize it. So affording F20 in this space, your attention is really valuable. And then also to those who made it possible in the background. I mean, we work very in an indirect relationship with the sound crew, the light crew there at the back. You've always had our back. Thank you for that. Our colleagues here on the side, the sign language interpreters, making sure that what we're saying can reach as many people as possible. Those in the back, those who were speaking on stage would have known Caleb there, who sits and was miking up everyone and making sure everyone could be, the speakers on stage could be heard. So thank you to all those in the background as well who made our job so seamless and so easy. And just before we leave you, I just want to note I've been asked to, at the end, there will be a QR code for you to also do an evaluation. As you know, that's really, really useful for when we're thinking about how to improve these kind of events. For next year, this is an ongoing year-on-year thing, so please do take a little bit of time, that last bit of attention you have afterwards, just to invest in that. From my side and from Babalwa's side, thank you so much for having us for this space. We appreciate it. And then I hand over to Katrin and to Raisa to take us for the last session.
All right, so while we are speaking and giving the official thank yous, can I please ask everybody to move a little bit forward, because we do have a very special performance after us. Like, we're not the special performance. So please don't be shy, come on forward. And while you do, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone. But of course, there's always special people that we have to thank, and we will start very much with our hosts. So I want to thank Democracy Works and Raisa for their wonderful partnership and collaboration for this forum. And I think it's really very much a lot to your contributions and your team. To all of our co-hosts, to all of our network partners, and all of our supporters. As you might have noticed, this has been a collaborative space, so there's a lot of the content development was done through our network partners and through our co-hosts. So thanks a lot to them.
Thank you, Catherine.
So we're going to do a lot of these?
Thank you.
Yes.
So, yes, just a special thanks to the City of Cape Town for the participation of the Deputy Mayor Andrews. A special thank you to the Presidential Climate Commission and JET PMU team, and all the South African government representatives who chose to spend this 2 days with us. And then also, that is over to you.
Next one is me. So the next round of thanks, and now if some of these will be called out by name, so if you do hear your name, please get up. First of all, a huge and heartfelt, and from the bottom of my twinkling toes, thank you to our marvelous MCs. So Bawalwa and Rion. I cannot say how many times I was asked over the last 2 days, like, where did you find them? I was like, yes, we can. And I'm hoping you get a lot of new context from this as well. Then to our hosts of the space, to the entire staff at Kirstenbosch and the Moyo restaurant, again, for giving us this space. We are the only conference taking place at this time because they will be renovating soon, so it's a very, very special treat for us to be here in these extremely beautiful gardens.
and to eat the lovely food that Moyo provided for us over the last 3 days. Then I would like to also thank the nursery, so the plant nursery of Kirstenbosch Gardens, Happy by Nature, who have provided all of the plants you see on loan. So they will go back to the nursery, nothing will die, and also, in case you didn't know, you will get, if you want, a 10% discount if you want to buy any of the plants. And now, I am ending at some point, I promise. And then now to one person and her team who have been sleepless for 2 weeks, I want to say. Every time we were wondering, why is she still answering her WhatsApps at midnight and then again at 5 o'clock in the morning? So this shout out goes very specifically to Marian Lau from Bahela Events. Get up, show your face. There she is. Unbelievable what this woman has delivered in the last few weeks. It's incredible, and even before, so without her, nothing would have been working here. Same to also a little bit echo what Rion already mentioned. Thank you to JP and his team at the AV and Tech. So the Upper Tone team and who not only provided all the technical, beautiful lighting, everything here, but also the design of the conference. So again, big thanks to that and for helping us make it so special. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, just a very, very special thank you to the sign language team. South Africa obviously has South African Sign Language, and it's now been included as the 12th official language of our country. And so it was very, very special to have that level of accessibility to the content. A big thank you to everyone who traveled from all over the world to be here with us. And then a very, very special thank you to all the CSOs, local South African CSOs that came through to help us stay grounded and kind of really link everything that we were talking about to the local reality. Oh, and thank you to the Democracy Works team. Lerato and Ujin, for all of your hard work and your amazing dedication over the last months. And thank you to our Executive Director, Almo, who kind of has always just supported our dreams and whatever we want to do and feel passionate about. Thank you.
Right, and so that leaves me with the people I work closest with and who I am so proud to have with me, not only here in South Africa, but also want to give a shout out to two of our advisors who stayed back in Germany. So if they are online still, they have been cheering us from afar. So big greetings to Klaus and Stefan. But now, to my wonderful F20 team, and this, again, I'm going to force them to get up. So I would like to thank Nicole Fink, who's been... who many of you might have been in touch with when it comes to all of the logistics, the finances, the travel arrangements. She's been the master of our speaker registration, so that's a big thanks to Nicole. I'm sure I forgot a million other things. I'm just trying to wing this. Second person, this is Larissa Brickus. She is our communications person. Get up, will you? Larissa has been in charge of all of the communications, social media, connecting with our videos, with our photographers. So she's been also working endlessly and tirelessly on this. And now, last but not least, the mastermind of the Climate Solutions Forum, the Mrs. Excel list, the Mrs. Microsoft Planner, Celine Strofe. She is the one. She is the one who kept this all together, so without her, nothing would have happened. And with that, finally we're done with all the thanks. I do have one little quote before we go into the cultural section of this day, because I started with a quote, so I want to end with a quote. And this is by two authors, Ayana Elizabeth Johnson and Catherine K. Wilkinson, who said, "It is a magnificent thing to be alive in a moment that matters so much. Let's proceed with broken open hearts, seeking truth, summoning courage, and focus on solutions." So now, please welcome to stage our performance artist who is going to close us out with a poem. Please welcome, with lots of stamping and clapping, Itai Hakim.
Is this on? Good evening. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who joined us yesterday and today. I feel the conversations we've been having de-bordered our space, despite our differences and where we come from. I think that the insights and the stories that we heard from the different participants also gave us a sense of understanding that the problem is universal. We're all kind of under this sense of a deteriorating sky, and we're all trying to figure out this climate situation after the pause of COVID. So I just wanted to say great appreciation and congratulations on the people that are resilient on the ground. Please keep doing what you're doing. I'm very inspired by the stories that I've heard. If you've met someone here that's kind of inspired you to do more, collaborate, please connect. I think sometimes we undervalue the necessity of dialogue, but I'm also very interested in the magic that is created when we do come together. And it's from that single moment that we're able to continue the work. So congratulations to everyone. Thank you. The future summons us to speak on a tomorrow we are yet to name. Denizens of the detour, agitators of the status quo, coordinators of social impact. We are gathered here today to hold up a mirror that denies the mirage to speak on behalf of Earth's analog scars. Manasiti's recollection in a keynote reminded us that the rhythm of water is broken. If it rained, a flood. If it didn't, a drought, and the conditions of famine. And the identity and livelihood of the indigenous pastoralist communities shifting, the death of cattle, the lack of crops, and nothing to take to market. Is this what climate crisis harvests? And will we reach our SDG targets? I am encouraged by the presence of all the children of Gaia who came to this planet robed in the designation of custodian and being her protectors. All levels of civil society agreeing that we will actively working on maintaining better relations. The remarks by the Deputy Mayor Eddie Andrews allaying our fears that the state is present through its arms of the Presidential Climate Commission and the Department of Forestries, Fisheries and the Environment. All gathered notables, prime ministers of plastic promises, chancellors of carbon credits, secretaries of transitioning legislature, professors of archaeological amnesia. This is the age of intervention. Global South has marked this moment as a milestone through this Climate Solutions Forum and the upcoming G20. We ask for a new mathematics for the margins, a rethinking of our formulation of risk and the complexity of philanthropy and private investment. And in the case studies shared, demonstrated that this innovation and partnerships needed to be tailor-made to context and cultures impacted. Indigenous knowledge of the relationship with land is the analog intelligence we are to borrow from in the formulation of a data-driven understanding of the region. How do we industrialize beyond being a developing nation and ensure equal participation in the economy? Will the new forms of employment include youth still eager about a green future? Which forms of social justice will ensure the reduction of inequality? The inheritance of our action is the sum of our promises here, to become the trees whose shade we shall not sit under. But still, there are seeds, and some fall on good soil. In Senegal, women plant trees like prayers, reclaiming soil and memories in tandem. In Bolivia, rivers are granted rights. In Uganda, youth form parliaments of the possible. They do not ask for the permission to imagine. The elders say, the road is shown by those who have walked it before. In classrooms and community gardens, in climate vigils and street murals, we rehearse another world. Still, we gather, we question, we return. Not because we are certain, but because the earth has already spoken. And the question remains, what does transformation mean when the future summons us still? Hopeful of a tomorrow we have named ours, the one that we built together. Fully aware that our presence was not fleeting, and that our solidarity in action had meaning. I welcome it too. A future we have named together. A future we have named together. Thank you.